Round 6 of the 2020 Michelin Le Mans Cup brings us to the Algarve International Circuit for another 120-minute race. Qualifying is done and dusted. LMP3s and GT3s have a set order, and we're about to get racing in just under 20 minutes' time to determine who wins the LMP3 championship for this season. GT3 is already sorted, and with that comes, of course, an invitation to the 24 Hours of Le Mans for season 2021. 27 degrees in the air and just creeping over the 30-degree mark for the track temperature as well, on a very recently resurfaced track here at the Algarve International venue. Great to be back. A couple of years ago we moved from Estoril to this venue for not only the Michelin Le Mans Cup but also the European Le Mans Series, a race that will take place here tomorrow. And it's Johnny Palmer and Bruce Jones once again taking you through proceedings. If one thing has proven the case with this place and this championship over the years, Bruce, very difficult to predict, and it's always busy in the early stages.
Oh, absolutely so, and the driver just can't wait to get released out onto the circuit. Glad to see the Rinaldi Racing entry is moving, because the engine cover was back off that in the area behind the pit building a short while ago, and concerned faces, but they've got the 55 car onto the track. That's shared by Alexander Matchell and young Argentinian Nicolas Varone, making his debut at this level. And in fact, throughout the course this weekend, there have been new faces in new places. We've got the season to its final round, so well done to all involved. But really, Johnny, the interesting thing for me is how many teenagers are coming to play in P3 prototypes. It was the domain of the older driver who wanted to move up from GT cars a while ago, but these guys are coming hot foot from single-seaters. Alessandro Giretti in the race as well, another 18, 19-year-old coming across from racing single-seaters, largely in the Far East, a bit of Formula 3, a lot of Formula 4, but right at the end of the season, he's come across to try P3 as well. It really is a new mix. Cars still doing that traditional in and out of the pits to keep the team in touch, but what a stage to have the final round of the year. I mean, well done to all involved for getting us through to the final round, but this circuit, 4.652 kilometres of absolute glory. It's a rodeo ride. It dips, it bucks, it curves, and it's just a wonderful challenge. We'd have all thought 20 degrees was very good for air temperature, but 27 degrees, it just feels like high summer. Well, not high summer. High summer here is probably about 35 degrees plus, but high summer to those of us from Northern Europe. So it's a fantastic end to the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and hopefully we'll have the same for tomorrow's finale for the European Le Mans Series.
Yeah, this 5-minute segment actually billed as warm-up, which is a surprise to me because it's actually not on the timetable as such, but it enables everybody to kind of get used to the current conditions. Tyre choice, well, it's slicks or slicks really. There isn't necessarily something to do there, but they could adjust tyre pressures, and that just enables them to have a little bit more track time. This is very much a new thing in the European Le Mans Series as well, and that is on the schedule, a 5-minute warm-up ahead of tomorrow's 11 o'clock ELMS finale. So I think what will happen is the cars will be waved back into the pit lane, and then it'll be reopened again to allow the cars to head from the pits to the dummy grid, and then it'll be a rolling start, of course, behind the pace car. and 21 cars. 14 of them, well, the 17 of them LMP3s and the 4 additional GT3 cars, with the championship already sewn up in the favour of Iron Lynx and the lone driver Rino Mastronardi, because there's at least one change when Giacomo Puccini wasn't able to join him in an earlier round. So Puccini behind on points, but we'll be very grateful nevertheless for Rino's fabulous driving, particularly in the early stints of the 2-hour races, to enable at least the team to get a championship win and ensure that Iron Lynx will be on the grid for Le Mans next year.
When one looks at the championship points, you could agree Puccini is the outside hope, but that, of course, he's a teammate, so there's nothing he can do about it. But the fact is that with that extra point for pole position, had he been an outside hope, his chances would be extinguished. He's unfortunately with him 26 points behind, with only 25 points to play for. But they've had such a cracking season. Cars still diving in and out of the pit lane, but we're going to have an exceptional race, I think, this afternoon. 2 hours, keep things simple. Tactics don't have to be enormously, calculated by a man or woman with a abacus at the back of the garage. It's rather more straightforward than that.
Yes, a lot of the regulations are actually have to take into account the fact that you must have a bronze driver in your lineup. So as long as that is the case and you put that bronze driver out for qualifying, then that's a lot of boxes ticked initially. It's then entirely up to the team as to which driver goes in first, whether it be the bronze or alternatively the silver or the gold alongside. No platinum rated drivers by the FIA permitted to take part in this championship. So that's always interesting to me as to who has been nominated as the start driver. And then generally, when it is the bronze, and that tends to be the lion's share of the decisions up and down the pit lane, it's a 50-minute drive time that you have to adhere to. So as long as you've done your 5-0 a part of the race, then you can pit, change a driver and put in your slightly quicker, slightly more experienced pilot. In LMP3 though, it's a bit more complicated than that because of the issue with the engine for 2020. The very thirsty 5.6 litre V8 designed by Nissan and then race prepared by Orica. Still, they can't guarantee that the LMP3 cars will do the full 2 hours, and that's the reason why every single LMP3 car will come in during the final 20 minutes of the race for an additional 85-second stop. So that's a minute and 25, isn't it? During which you can only fuel the car. I mean, you can do tyre pressures and wipe the windscreen if you wish as well, but anything crucial like a driver change, you can't weave that into strategy, despite one or two teams trying to do that when these altered regulations were first released, and one or two people were trying to find the loopholes, but the ACO and the FIA have closed those very quickly. So there's a sort of standard stop where you will do the driver change at roughly half distance, or any time after 50 minutes will be fine. And that's the same for the GT3s, and they don't have the concern about the thirsty engine. So GT3s will just do a single stop for the driver change and potentially tyres as well, certainly for fuel.
Now DKR Engineering very, very close. They're poised to make it 4 Michelin Le Mans Cup championships in a row, but there's a twist. You can see on the points, Laurence Hoare and Jean Gloria top at 105 points apiece, but unfortunately Jean Gloria not with us this weekend. A bit of family matters to be attended to. His place is being taken by Wolfgang Triller, German racer who races for DKR Engineering in the European Le Mans Series. He's come down, so it's a real, well, not a concern, but for Laurence Hoare, he doesn't want to win the title on his own. So Johnny and I have been discussing over lunch, very nice lunch too, thank you, what the permutations might be, and you came up with a theory that maybe Laurence Hoare would pull over at some point if the closest of the chasers, which is Edouard Cauhape and Niccolo Molini, if they're not in a position to overhaul them, does he just back it off? But he'd have to finish out of the points. He'd have to finish outside the top 10 to do so. So anyhow, let's not get ahead of ourselves. But, it's really tricky there for Jean Gloria, just not able to come down here to Portugal. And, yeah, it is a bit of a dilemma.
Even outside the top 10 wouldn't be good enough, because then Laurence Hoare gets half a point for finishing 11th or 12th or 13th, so that he would still win the title by half a point.
Oh, well, that makes it simpler then, doesn't it?
Yeah, I'm not sure what would be more galling. So Jean Gloria's name is on the side of the car. That shows you how late the decision was made. Wolfgang Triller actually Laurence Hoare's co-pilot, therefore, in the number 3 car. If you don't cross the line and you park it in the pit lane with a lap to go, under ACO rules you have to be running by the checkered flag. So parking it at the start of the last lap would do it fine, but they need to make sure that Molini and Edward Kirkhope in the 37 car were way down, you know, well, as long as they weren't winning the race, but they'd have to say 6th or 7th, and no chance of catching those places up again. Because the last thing you want to do is make a decision like that, as brave as that, and then for it all to go wrong. I think DKR may just play it safe and take the points that head their way, but we will wait and see.
But they have just been consistently quick across 4 years, and for any team to do that in any championship, that really is a feather in their hat, because we all know motor racing is it's like trying to hold a handful of mercury, quicksilver between your fingers. You know, you don't stay at the top forever, but certainly some of the teams, United Autosports, Cool Racing, really just having such a strong run, which they need against DKR Engineering. But on the grid, don't look in the top 10 for DKR. They're starting outside it. Wolfgang Triller good only for 12th out of the 17 runners in that class. So certainly things a little different to the norm, normally right at the sharp end of the grid. So it's a very different environment. First row, possibly second row, you're relatively clear of the trouble, but down in the middle of the pack, it's always anybody's guess.
Jean Glorieux, despite not being here today, is a previous LMP3 champion, we mustn't forget, for the Michelin Le Mans Cup. He did that in the first year that P3s were part of the series, 2017, with Alexander Torrell. And then the following year, DKR again were victorious with Jens Pettersson and Leonard Hugenboom, winning by over 20 points in the end. They were that dominant in 2018. Francois Kerman and Laurence Hoare, who we find both now in the European Le Mans Series for DKR, victorious in 2019. So will it again be the Luxembourgish team taking a clean sweep? This stranglehold that they've had on the LMP3 title ever since it was brought into action in 2017. Prior to that, of course, it was the Michelin GT3 Le Mans Cup, and predominantly for GT cars, apart from in 2016 when everybody went to Le Mans for the Road to Le Mans event, and LMP3s were kind of chucked in as an extra. And immediately people said, well, this is a great idea, why not make them a regular in the championship? The number 7 car of Tony Wells and Colin Noble will be started by the man from Middlesbrough, Wells, and handed therefore to Edinburgh-based Colin Noble just after the 50-minute mark, you would have to think. Pit lane open only for the LMP3 cars. Currently they will head out then to form up on the dummy grid on the main start-finish straight, and then the GT3 cars will be allowed to leave the pit lane as well. In fact, that pit lane is now open for 4 of the GT cars. And remember that they only have to stop once for a minimum of 125 seconds in the pit lane. However, all 4 cars will actually have to take on a bit of extra time as well because of where they are in the championship. So the 8 car, 29 extra seconds to the 125 that they already have to automatically serve. And when you compare that to everybody else, it's a significant chunk, because the 74 Ferrari only has to serve 13 extra seconds, the 2 Porsche 3 extra seconds, and the 50 car John Hartshorn and Ollie Hancock an extra second. So we're looking for 126 rather than 125. But if we're in a scenario where the Iron Lynx Ferrari comes into pit road way out in front, just bear in mind it's going to lose half a minute compared to the 50 car, and pretty much half a minute to the 2 Porsche as well. And already Rino Mastronardi admitting actually in his interview with Haley after the session that Porsche look on it this weekend. They've certainly got speed as far as the balance of performance is concerned. They look very even indeed, the 2 very different cars, mid-engine, rear-engine.
Yeah, and what was noticeable, I found, in qualifying was the fact that Nicky Leutviller was able to get very close to his ultimate pace very quickly. His first flying lap was almost right on the money. The next one marginally quicker, but a lot of the others took a while to build up. But it is 1 Porsche against 3 Ferraris in the GT3 class, but they seemed to deliver their form very, very differently. Or maybe simply Nicky Leutviller was lit up and just nailed that first banker flying lap, but it certainly looked impressive and did a few more laps very close to his ultimate pace. So 2 class wins already this year. Could they be adding a 3rd this afternoon for TFT Racing? The lone Porsche against those 3 Ferraris in the GT3 class, but of course up at the front of the field it's that mixture of Ligiers and Duquesnes, 17 of them all in. now forming up at the front end of the grid, and they have a little shade, and you'd have thought in October that would actually be something in which they'll feel cool, but right now they're in a warm racing car and it's 27 degrees air temperature. Just remember this, 30 degrees track temperature. They're not going to have to go looking for tyre life and tyre warmth.
No, certainly not, and especially on a freshly resurfaced racetrack as well. That was all done in preparation for last weekend's Formula One Grand Prix here at Portimão, and that seemed to go down very well indeed. A lot of regular F1 fans, I think, didn't even know this place existed and were instant converts to being a fan of the Algarve International Circuit. Whether that can ever happen again, we'll just have to wait and see, but night in a very unusual year for F1 to be visiting some lesser-known European tracks.
And in fact, I had a little look once they started listing the likes of Mugello and the Algarve International Circuit as to where else has the grading, the FIA grading. You could go to a lot of countries. There are a whole host of circuits, some of which we don't tend to know because they're motorbike circuits, but they're also got the car license. There's one up in Finland, etc., etc. So you can start having your flights of fantasy. Where would you put your fantasy Formula One season? But it's been a breath of fresh air, and if anything that gets the Istanbul Park circuit back into the World Championship at any level, any category of World Championship racing gets my vote. That was one of the absolute brilliant tracks the past 20 years, and a shame it got parked very early on, but delighted to hear that it can still host racing, because not so long ago Story said it was just being used for storing cars before they were being sold, and that normally leads to a housing development. But right now it's great that hasn't happened, and we will get that back. In fact, I think these cars will go rather well around there in the future too. Just bear that in mind, Johnny.
All right, yeah, well, I'll put a word in to all the important people in and around the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Big announcement last time we were racing these cars at Monza for the 2021 season, which will once again start in April. That's more like it, isn't it, rather than July, and we'll head to Barcelona for the opening race, to the Road to Le Mans event with 2 races across that week. Green flag, by the way, out today as the rolling lap commences. We are about 4 minutes away from race start, so that is bang on time. But yes, later on in 2021, trips back to Monza in July, Paul Ricard in the south of France at the end of August, Spa-Francorchamps in September, and here to the Algarve International Circuit in just under a year's time on the 24th of October. Here's the grid then, Molini with another pole position. He'll start alongside in his cool racing car, the Graf entered Roy Penttinen Ligier, so it is an all-jet P320 front row. Then Newman Motorsport with a great performance from Moritz Krantz to start alongside Maurice Smith in the sister cool racing Ligier, the team from Switzerland. Row 3 is the United Autosports car with John Schauerman at the wheel alongside Alexander Matschel for the returning Rinaldi Racing. Tony Wells on the inside of the 4th row, and new to the championship, Miguel Cristoval, who resides in Lisbon, so the short drive down to the south coast to be taking part in this event for Virage, Team Virage. Edex Sport, the French outfit with Patrice Lafargue alongside Christophe Cresp for MV2S Racing. Then it's the Motorsport 98 crew of Belgium with Eric de Donker at the wheel alongside Wolfgang Triller, who is in for the potential champions DKR Engineering. Steve Parrow for Rinaldi Racing and Michael Jensen, not to be confused with Mikkel Jensen, who we will see tomorrow in the ELMS. Rob Hodes for Nielsen Racing starts 15th alongside Daniel Schneider. That will complete the 8th row. And then one of each from LMP3 and GT3 on the 9th row, with CD Sport, Jacques Wolf alongside poleman Rene Mastronardi for Iron Lynx. It's the TFT Porsche of Nicky Leutwiler to start 19th alongside Michel Broniszewski in the 74 Kessel Racing Ferrari, and John Hartshorn will be at the rear, having to serve just 1 extra second when it gets to his pit stop, and expect John in. That's sort of 50-51 minutes, depending on where he is on the track and at what point the clock is up to hand over to Ollie Hancock and to bring that Kessel Racing Ferrari to the finish. So the extra spice of an additional stop for LMP3, we've had that all year. And which way will GT3s go, depending on, of course, the extra time that each of those cars has to serve. For the final time then, in 2020, the grid is starting to take shape in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Technically no split after qualifying between LMP3 and GT3, but they have completely split themselves on the grid sheet. 1st to 17th are all LMP3s, and the GT3s tack onto the back. The pace car then jumps from one side of the track to the other, retires to the pit lane, and it's all eyes on the lighting gantry with Nicola Molini dictating the pace. The red lights remain on for the time being, but for the final time this season, we're about to go racing in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Now it's go. It's like a bomb burst behind as the cars try to go 4-5 abreast all the way down to the natural pinch point, which is turn 1. It is a good getaway from Molini in for Cool Racing. Coolish tyres though, and a bit of chaos behind, which is the MV2S car running a touch wide on the exit. Team Virage quite possibly involved with that as well. And hard onto the brakes goes the 55 car of Alexander Matschel. The start's under investigation. We always get that message anyway, even though everybody was behaving themselves quite possibly. As then the leaders head down the hill, that short decline into turn 5, with Molini leading Rory Penttinen, who in turn is ahead of Moritz Krantz.
Yeah, looking down towards the tail of the field, some of the GT3 runners have got past some of the P3s, and it looks like it's Rino Mastronardi who's got away really well. The GT drivers love getting in. They've got very different performance potential. Very clean start at the front between Molini and Penttinen from the front row. There was a little look from Moritz Krantz down into turn 1, got very, very close to the tail of Penttinen, but just managed to back out between turn 1 and 2. There, the middle of the shot, as they dive down from turn 11 into the compression at turn 12, just really pushing and badgering cars he has no right to do, Rino Mastronardi, but he's got company from behind. He's got Michel Broniczewski tucked in, and then Nicky Leutwiler just a little bit further back in the Porsche in the GT3 class.
So the Polish driver realising he better get a wriggle on here. If he can get in front of Rino Mastronardi, then we got a race, because the danger is he allows the Italian to just scamper away, maybe put a couple of LMP3s between the white and black number 8 car and the red and white in hot pursuit. But Broniczewski, as they're still trying to build a tyre temperature, needs to try and make a move as early as possible. But in turn, Michel's got some company, because Daniel Schneider's looking to recover 1 or 2 places he lost early doors. He's in the 24 United Autosports car, and there's a challenge on as well for 5th position with, it is the Team Virage car that ran a touch wide, because that's now pushing in 6th place with Miguel Cristobal, eager to get that place back again from Alexander Matschel, but he ran a bit wide at turn 3. That's cost him more time.
Yeah, Miguel, a driver who's has a background in rallying from the very end of the 20th century, but more recently he's just been getting back onto the circuit in GT4, so it's a massive step up to LMP3, but you can see how hard he's trying. The fact he outbraked himself and ran a little bit wide, just showing he's still learning where the limits are for him. Battle for second position, still very good, just 0.3 of a second. Number 21, the Mulner Motorsport entry, Moritz Krantz, who was one of the stars of qualifying, and like a lot of them, lost their very best time. It could have been higher on the grid, but starting 3rd, very impressive indeed. He's keeping Rory Penttinen honest, but a second clear and pulling away Nicola Molini, the outside hope in this championship challenge. 2nd on points at the moment. He needs to get every point he possibly can. He's got to win, along with Edouard Kauhap, to take the title, to depose the DKR pairing of Jean Gloria, who isn't here, and Lawrence Hoare, who most certainly is.
Yes, and they've also got to hope that the DKR engineering car does not finish as well, doesn't score any points at all, so that they can leap ahead of it. So it's a big ask, but it's quite possible. But
if the race stopped, there's a replay again of the Team Virage entry. Certainly, Miguel, it's the one behind it actually.
That is the MV2S car. That's the car I was getting confused with Team Virage at the start of the race. Yeah, so Christophe Cresp, I reckon that was, in 11th position.
Yeah, just finished my point. If they finished now, Nicola Molini would take 25 points, and that would put him just 1 point behind. No, 2 points, because there's 1 point going for 10th place at the moment for Wolfgang Triller, who's in the DKR engineering thing. That might be as high as they possibly, the biggest advantage that could come the way. But at this moment, the snapshot, Nicola Molini, he knows he has to win, and he's going off to try and do that. But it's a 2-driver race, and plenty of time for things to change. But all he can do is try and stretch his advantage. But it must be said, Rory Penttinen trying his best not to be dropped. It's 1.6, 1.7 seconds, so it's been very good opening lap or 2 for Nicola Molini. It's on to lap 3.
So Triller with his hands full here, John Schaumann right behind. United Autosports could do cool Racing a bit of a favour here. Not that they need to, there's no connection between those two teams, but inadvertently, if Triller can fall outside of the top 10, then all of a sudden the situation for Cool Racing gets a slightly brighter. I'm not sure anybody gave Cool Racing much of a hope of wrestling the championship away from DKR. but they're doing all that they need to do right now. They've just got to look after their own race and see how things pan out behind them. Rory, oh, there's a car off into the gravel trap. Don't think it's caught the tyre barrier despite the
CD
angle.
Sport?
Yes, car 5 it is, so one of a couple of CD Sport cars entered. That's Michael Jensen, who has come a cropper into the gravel trap. Exit of 11, I make that.
And we've got another car off as well. I'm just trying to identify. Oh, is that the same one from a different angle?
Yes.
Sorry, it looks like it was into the tyre wall. But so sudden flurry there, and again that's up at the top of the hill. Just almost helped on his way. Didn't even turn into turn 11. That's a very unusual one. Normally people get it wrong on the exit. We saw cars all 4 wheels in the air going over the crest and finding there was no track beneath them. But safety car coming out. No surprise, that car stuck in the gravel. So the safety car will come round and pick up the leader. So the advantage, 2.2 seconds, have been gained by Nicola Molini at the front of the race. That will come down as Rory Penttinen is given the chance to get onto his tail. Maurice Krantz, Maurice Smith, but all able to close up. Alexander Maxwell completing the top 6. Miguel Cristobal making a very, very impressive debut in the Michelin Le Mans Cup.
Another message on the bottom of our screen, one I always enjoy reading, which is no further investigation necessary as far as the race start was concerned. So everybody was in the correct order as they crossed the start line. That must entirely replicate the order that they qualified in, of course, and that's all been checked and is fine. GT3s then all in one gaggle towards the rear of the pack. It did look like Michael Jensen tangled with another car on the way into turn 11, and I was trying to work out who was around him. It was a bluish car, I thought, so might have possibly been the number 10 Nielsen Racing Machine. It was just outside the top 10 that scrapping was going on, and pushed out into the marbles, couldn't turn in. Michael Jensen found himself out in that gravel trap. But yeah, the angle of the first view that we had of that car made it look like it had ended up embedded in the tyres, but fell short of that, thankfully. The gravel trap did its job nicely in arresting the speed of Michael Jensen's car, and the Mercedes safety car will now be deployed to temper this pace.
Can't quite understand why Michael Jensen can't get that car moving. Clearly stalled, won't fire up, and he's sitting there. If he was on tarmac, he could just drift it down the hill and bump start it. But unfortunately for him, it's in the gravel. Maybe some other further problems. We didn't see the lead up to the accident, but I think you're quite right. The car behind may have put him, maybe he just went a little bit wide on the corner, but he did seem to be taking an unusual trajectory, one that would suggest there was a helping hand, perhaps. But come what may, we have one of the 2 CD Sports cars stuck in the gravel. The sister one, Jacques Wolf, is running in 14th place overall. Iron Lynx, Rino Mastronardi lead the GT3 class ahead of Michel Bronicheski, and obviously the field will be bunched up very much. The CD Sport, Michael Jensen, number 5, now being brought back out of the gravel onto the green stuff, and should be able, with a little bit of help, to get on its way all over again. So the safety car period shouldn't be too much of a long one. No barrier damage because nothing was actually hit. It was just a simple beaching at the crest of the hill at the highest point on the circuit. Fabulous, fabulous drop down from turn 11 to turn 12, and then as fast as you go up, you almost have to go up again, because the track whips up through from 12 to 13 and then goes on that flat ridge, a wonderful place for photographers to catch a car silhouetted against the sky. And certainly for the Formula 1 photographers last weekend, it was a huge treat to find some angles that are so comprehensively different to the circuits they normally visit. Even Interlagos can't help with that, but I'm slightly concerned. There's a little bit of gravel that's come off the bottom of Michael Jensen's car, and it's just where the cars are coming down to land between turns 11 and 12. We certainly saw some in qualifying, Johnny, having a real bucking Bronco ride. Now they get a chance to see that any second now. The race leaders behind the safety car going to come clock that gravel if they're paying attention, and know that next time around they can't afford to go deep into turn 11, otherwise you'll catch that gravel as you drop down the hill. Yeah,
it was Daniel Schneider, wasn't it, who left the ground coming out of 11. Christoph Cresp with an early stop as well, I noticed. Now that car was locking up, wasn't it, going into 10 and 11?
Yeah.
So I just wonder whether they thought they could solve something setup-wise there. However, the car has gone a lap down, as has Michael Jensen as well. But the thing I like about ACO rules racing is that even if you have had a gravelly moment, generally you can be towed out of there and you are permitted to rejoin the race despite the outside assistance. And Jensen doing entirely the right thing here to stay well off the racing line, allow everybody through for a second time, so it'll now be 2 laps off the leaders. but at least they can still have a race. You know, the second driver due in that car, who is Nick Adcock, will at least get some time behind the wheel.
Jensen will want to get it across the track fairly soon. He's getting the tail end of the P3 runners through, then come the GT3 runners, then he can cross over. He needs to get to the other side of the track. His crew are already waiting in the pit lane for him for a check over, because they might be concerned as to why that car couldn't keep going through the gravel, why it couldn't be fired up. It had no power. It was dragged out of the gravel, then got it with gravity down the hill. But checking it out, they're not going to be scoring points in the race, barring considerable number of disasters to others, but it's about finishing the season, doing so in this wonderful late autumn Portuguese sunshine, and it's just too good a track not to go racing on. Of course they want to go out for the rest of the race. Yeah,
and the Spanish outfits, a relatively short journey to actually be here, have brought two cars, one of which is still on the lead lap. That's the Jacques Wolf in the number 6 car, and he shares that with Geoffrey Denarder. But yeah, it would be great to have to get the 5 car to the finish as well, irrespective of how delayed it may have been. And actually, having said that Christophe Cresp is off the lead lap, that car's now been handed to Fabien Leverne, according to our timing screen. So it's already had one pit stop. They've done a driver change, and Leverne in for a little while now. But I'm just trying to tell from the times coming in, I think that car is just about on the lead lap and is being permitted to catch up with the safety car train. So you never know. Let's not discount MV2S. It's going to go well now with Leverne at the wheel, no doubt about that. But of course, its first driver, Christophe Cresp, will need to be put back in again because he's done nothing like the required minimum drive time, which is 50 minutes.
Bodywork off the back of Michael Jensen's car, check over all around. Now on a replay, well, there was a car up the inside which quite possibly was a Nielsen Racing entry, and I think presented to the outside and rather too late to turn into the corner. Very unfortunately for Michael Jensen. Still can't get as to why he couldn't get the engine fired up. It stalled and wouldn't restart. But again, they're taking the opportunity to check it square all the way around after that moment into the gravel.
Yeah, so that may well have been Rob Hodes in the 10. What we can't tell you is whether the two cars tangled just before entering our frame, and then the 5 car exited stage left into the gravel. The good news is there's been no message on the screen to say that an incident, for example, involving car 10 and 5 is being investigated, so may well have just been an honest mistake from Michael Jensen. So that car's going to stay in the pits for a little while. 2 laps down now, so there's no major urgency in getting it back in the race. But Nick Adcock, I'm sure, would want a bit of time behind the wheel to get his, well, ideally his full stint in. Checking now in the front right wheel arch for something, but don't entirely look like they know what they're looking for. So maybe it's just a complaint from the driver, and now they're trying to assess exactly what might have gone wrong.
Well, I mean, we don't know if there was any contact between the two cars, but if there was any, it would have been either on the rear or on the right-hand flank from the driver's point of view, so well worth checking it out. Right, we know already the identity of the champion in the GT3 class. It's the driver of the Iron Lynx Ferrari. We've got someone possible. Was that with a puncture? One of the United Autosports cars off at the side of the circuit there. Daniel Schneider, presumably, because he's running around just ahead of the GT3 runners. Moment of inattention, or, well, I certainly was concerned he might have picked up a puncture and was just trying to pull wide off the circuit, but I think he was just a little bit wide off the circuit, full stop. But what we want behind the safety car is for everybody to be running close together. We know the restart is going to be coming fairly soon, and it's really galling for a driver if those up ahead, you cannot overtake them, but they're just not keeping up with those in front. So a general urging for everybody to keep going. And the answer to your question about the M2 VS car, Fabien Leverne, there it is at the tail of the grouping, so he didn't fall off the lead lap with that driver change from Christophe Cresp.
Marshall's still out on track in the gravel trap at 10 and 11, and what are they looking at? Maybe the gravel that's been brought onto the runoff area, which they want to be swept. I don't think there are any of those pesky drain covers causing difficulties at that part of the circuit, but that's already brought free practice 2 early this morning to a halt. They had to red flag it because of a loose drain cover down at turn 1, which needed to be glued or cemented back into place. And then later on in the day today, the same problem at turns 7 and 8. But the Marshall's obviously not too happy with that situation. A lot of gravel on the track, and some of it as well on the grass crete, where cars naturally run wide on the exit of turn 11.
Yeah, the two marshals went to look at it. One ran back to the marshal's post, and I think I spotted him then sprinting back towards the point with the broom. Yes, getting quickly, because it's a corner. You cannot see the exit. You can't even see the track when you get to the exit. It drops away so steeply, and it's more than easy to run a little bit wide. And the last thing we want is someone rotating on that gravel, coming back across the track, snapping to driver's right, when everyone else, you're sort of really committed to your line. Down in the world of CD Sport, did see another driver walking towards the car, whether that's Nick Adcock waiting to take it over, or whether it's the first driver, Michael Jensen, staying, having got out of the car, going back across. They're not in a hurry. They will go back out in the race, but any hope of points, it's being extinguished at the point of going off the circuit, let alone having to wait all these laps to be removed from the gravel, then back into the pit lane. But I'm sure that car will rejoin. We've got the clock counting down, effectively 15 minutes, the 2 hours have run. The safety car is still at the front, but until those marshals between turns 10 and 11 have withdrawn to safety, a point of safety behind the concrete wall, we will not be restarting this race. But as soon as they are, we will.
Yeah, and some of that will be the instruction of Eduardo Freitas and his team as well, just not happy to start proceedings once again. Very easy to pick up a puncture from what looked like quite small stones from the gravel track, but there's a decent handful there, and a lot of them are sharp on the edge as well, and could easily cut a tyre when you are leaning on it coming out of 11. The next thing you'll know about is probably through 15 when the tyre lets go, and that's a massive accident then. As you were talking about Paul Petit a couple of years ago, ending up in the pit lane entry backwards into the tyre barrier that separates the racetrack from pit road. So look to try and avoid anything like that. The safety car is going to come in this lap though, and that message just appearing in front of our eyes. So they've done a very good job, and a speedy one at that. We'll be back racing very shortly.
Now, a really important thing for DKR Engineering, Wolfgang Triller driving at the moment. He's 9th. He needs to keep up with those cars ahead.
Yeah, so Molini leading from Rory Penttinen and Moritz Krantz. That's exactly the order they qualified in. Let's hear from DKR Engineering.
I'm joined here by Lawrence, driver for DKR Engineering, car number 3. Now, probably not how you'd like things to have spanned out the final stop of this Michelin Le Mans Cup, because you're obviously without Jean Glorieux. Firstly, how's he doing and how come he's not here today?
Unfortunately, he's not here because, as far as I know, his wife is ill and he has to take care of the children, and obviously it's a bit of a tricky situation, so nobody can help him at the moment with the COVID.
He does have a replacement in Wolfgang Triller. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.
So we'll leave it there as far as DKR is concerned, because we're back to racing. That was part of the reason why the interview had to be briefly stopped, because throwing their way across the line, and what a great sound they made. Nicola Molini for Cool Racing leading in the Ligier. It's another Ligier second, Rory Penttinen, and then the best of the Duquesnes with the slightly larger headlights, car 21, blue and white for Moritz Krantz. Then the sister car of Cool Racing for Maurice Smith, Alexander Matchell under, again, really heavy pressure from Miguel Cristoval, and Tony Wells and Patrice Lafargue complete the top 8.
So not getting a rejoin there from Michael Jensen as yet. The car being pushed up the pit lane. Nicola Molini, he lost an advantage of 2.2 seconds under the safety car. It came right down. He's leading again, but pulling away again from Rory Penttinen. Pentinen's got his hands full in second place, being attacked by Moritz Krantz. In the world of GT3, it's Iron Lynx from Kessel Racing. 74 is the Kessel Racing in second place. Michel Bronicheski chasing after Rino Mastronardi. And they've got Fabien Laverne trying to interrupt their fun, because the number 27 in shot there, MV2S Racing, picks him off, gives advantage to Rino Mastronardi. He will pass Mastronardi shortly. At that point, Bronicheski and Loic Villa will be trying their best to close in, but at the moment it's advantage Mastronardi with that car as a buffer, a short-term buffer between him and the rest of the GT3 runners.
Daniel Schneider was a touch wide coming out of turn 14 there. You had a short straight before then you really attack 15, which goes on, and you have to really hang on to the car, make sure that you don't breach track limits on the exit of turn 15. The corners renumbered when you compare this year's track map to last, and they make slightly more sense in my eyes as well. as the battle continues on between 5th and 6th. Matchell versus Christopher, the local boy from, well, not Portimão, but a couple of hours drive north from Lisbon, and really pressurising the bright green and yellow Rinaldi Racing entry.
You can really sense every time I've seen Miguel Cristobal on track on his debut at this level of the championship, he seems to be really relishing these cars, trying to adapt his driving style to suit them. But you know, he has attack written across every lap he's out on the circuit. It's really good to see, and we've seen him early in the race outbraking himself a little bit down into turn 2 and turn 3, well, mainly turn 3, where you have to brake more heavily for the sharp right-hander. But he's certainly got a lot of pressure on Alexander Matchell. Matchell enjoying also his elevation to these cars, but in terms of experience, Cristobal a bit short. Not that it's showing. He's really going for it. And down at the back of the pack, we've got moves going on, because very quickly Fabian Laverne has caught and passed Daniel Schneider. He's done well. He picked off the GT3 runners. Now he's got the serious job. So this car had a little bit of a moment in the first part of the race before the safety car is now being driven in the way that it really should be. And a very impressive run from Laverne there.
Yeah, well, this team has deliberately decided to go off strategy. They were on the back foot anyway because of a lock-up from Christophe Cresp. The car was obviously not too happy, so they came in, did their 2-minute and 5-second stop, which there's nothing in the regulations to say you can't do that nice and early. Get the driver change done. The only thing now that Cresp has to do is make sure he completes his 50 minutes, and also they've got to do the extra stop because of the engine consumption in the final 20 minutes. So it's a different way of doing it, but it can come good, and I've seen that happen in the history of this championship before. So let's wait and see. No doubt about the fact that the MV2S racing car is flying, though, in the hands of Frenchman Laverne.
Yeah, I really think it was worth the roll of the dice. They weren't even quite in the points, they're just outside the points when it happened. This may be their way in, and I quite like it when someone decides to do something a little bit different. There had been a few little hiccups, so it was worth a shot. Up front, though, 1.6 seconds is the advantage. That's Julian Andlauer sitting down in the TFT Racing Porsche garage, and his co-driver, the team leader, Nicky Leutwiler, hanging on to the tail of Michel Bronicheski, who's less than a second down on Rino Mastronardi, the top 3 in the GT3 class, pulling clear of John Hartshorn by 10 seconds. But it really is a dogfight in this class, and TFT Racing have got 2 class wins so far in the 6 outings in this championship to date, and they'd desperately love to finish this season on a high with another win.
So swinging their way through turn 9, they reached the highest point on the circuit at 10 and 11, and then plunged downhill. But great to have 3 of the 4 GT3 cars entered into this race. Very close circles indeed. Hard onto the brakes to get through turn 13 for Rino Mastronardi, leading Michel Bronicheski in the red Ferrari, which just had a little bit of a squirrely moment from the rear there that he had to correct with a bit more steering input, some corrective, and then back in again to make sure he'd get the required turn in at 14. And the Porsche, watching it all unfold in front, just needs to stay in touch really, and ideally overtake one, if not both of those Ferraris, but that is far easier said than done. Meanwhile, what about Fabian Laverne? He's found somebody else now to try and get by, and at a quick step with Jacques Wolf in the number 6 car, a touch wide through 3. Surely Laverne can pick him off now on the run towards turn 5.
You'd really think so. Certainly the attitude of Laverne is pass, but every car he's stuck behind is allowing those up front to pull further clear, but he's super positive down. Well, Jack Wolf, how did you not know he was behind you and then move across on him? That wasn't really being very wide awake. But Fabian Laverne, great run. He'll be enjoying this, but he'll be getting a little bit frustrated every time he's slightly delayed. But what I'm just noticing, up at the front of the field, Nicola Morlini got 1.7 seconds clear, down to 1.4. It's now down to 1.1 seconds because Rory Penttinen in second place. As we look at the replay, I'm through. Oh, there you are. Let me move across on you. No damage done, I don't think, there. But Rory Penttinen has dropped Maurice Krantz off his tail in the lead Duquesne. Now he's having a Ligier battle. He's setting off after Nicola Morlini, who needs to win this race to have that tiniest glimmer of a hope of taking this title. The real outside bet, and of course all eyes on where is the championship leading car. DKR Engineering, Wolfgang Triller doing that first stint. We heard briefly from Lawrence Hoare, then we heard the noise of the whole field coming past as he was, we've got a spinner but a rejoiner. That's dearie me, up the bank and beyond.
Possibly 75.
I'd go for that.
Patrice Lafargue doing the opening stint. It's certainly got the look of an EDEC car, and we will see the 28 in the European Le Mans Series tomorrow as well.
Yep. It was, and it is, and it's going back to the pits. Have we got a puncture? No, don't think so. I just thought the right-hand side of the car looked a little low, but of course that's the gradient that holds the cars through that final sweep. Been a good lap or two for Rino Mastronardi, and we've had a change of position behind, because now the Porsche Nicky Leutwiler ahead of Michel Broniczewski, and now we could sense the speed was coming. Now let's see, can the Swiss racer head off after Mastronardi? But he's got to find 2.5 seconds, so it's been a good few laps for the Italian.
Yeah, and helped by that battle behind, which involved an overtake, as you said. Now, whether that was a mistake from Broniczewski that Leutwiler had to react to, or whether it was an overtake that Nicky fashioned himself, but the two car up to second, and now let's see whether Nicky can start to catch Rino Mastronardi, who, as you say, is a couple of seconds clear in the lead of the race.
Right, I'm going to throw something in from the side field. What you get for 8th place is 4 points, and that is now, after promotion, DKR Engineering, Wolfgang Triller, up to 8th place for those 4 points. But we've got Fabien Laverne as the spoiler coming up through the pack. He, at this rate, will be up ahead of him, pushing him back down to just the 2 points for 9th place, 1 point for 10th. So it's all very touch and go, because heading for the 25 points at this stage in the race with young Edward Cowhub to take over is Nicola Morlini. And you know what? Nicola has responded to Rory Pentinen's attack. It got down to 1.1 seconds. It's gone out to 2 seconds flat. Fastest lap of the race. And what do you do if you're the TV director? Keep your camera on Fabien Laverne. Another place gain from him. He'll be in the top 10. He is in the top 10.
That was him getting ahead of John Schaumann a few moments ago into turn 10. And gets him 10th place, as Bruce says. And now only 7/10 of a second away is Eric de Donker. There's going to be a drive-through penalty, though, assessed to car 12, which is the Team Virage entry, is it not, for overtaking beyond the track limits at the first corner, and that happened at the start of the race. Ah, yes, I remember Virage going wide. Hadn't realised there was a place being gained, though, at the time. That's been reviewed, and as a result, a drive-through penalty will not only rectify that, but put them a long way back because of the safety car we've recently had.
Well, bad news, unfortunately, for Miguel Cristoval. We think he's impressive, but taking a look at the restart, it was through turn 1 was okay, but it was running wide on the exit, one presumes. We saw it between 1 and... Oh, well, it wasn't even on the run between 1 and 2. It was coming out of turn 1, and he did gain a couple of places. But, you know, once you've gone wide, you might as well keep your foot in there, but a drive-through penalty. And black and white warning flag for Alexander Matschel for abusing track limits. So he's gone from a warning to a further warning, and the next one, he will also be serving a drive-through penalty. So the team will be saying, stay between the lines.
Yeah, but when you're defending from Miguel Cristoval, that's a tough ask, certainly. You're trying to keep up the speed. So one car will definitely have to come in for a drive-through. That's the 12. The 55, therefore, although with a black and white flag to its name, will get a bit of respite for the first time in the race.
And that also means that when the drive-through penalty is DKR Engineering will go from 8th up to 7th. Where's Fabien Laverne? He's the driver of a car that should be able to demote that. He's up to 9th. His next target is the DKR Engineering car. He started the lap just a whisker down on it, 0.4 of a second. And the rate he's been gaining, just as Wolfgang Triller goes up to 7th place when the drive-through is served by Team Virage, he'll be put back down again as Fabien Laverne keeps on his charge. Up front, though, 2.6 seconds. Morlini has settled into a pace that's better than any of his rivals can manage. Rory Pentinen in 2nd place. Car number 26 for Graf, 2.6 seconds down. And in fact, a renewed attack coming from behind. Suddenly, Moritz Krantz has put a few slightly slower laps behind him and is closing in. And DKR Engineering are being passed just there. Fabien Laverne, it's not just he likes turn 5, he seems to like any place you could overtake. He's picking off cars at will. Great run from Laverne.
Yeah, so getting ahead, as you say, of the car that currently leads the championship. What will that mean going forward for DKR Engineering? Laverne as high as 8th now after that early stop to get Christophe Cresp out of the MV2S racing car, and Fabien Laverne in as he works his way further up the order. We haven't yet seen all of Christophe Cresp's presence on this race. He's only really done about 5 minutes, so we need to get him in for certainly 3/4 of an hour or so. The incident involving car 5 at the start of the race. Now, was that the gravelly moment for Michael Jensen? 2:53, it was only 3 minutes into the race. They're looking at something that happened then. You reckon that tallies?
Absolutely so,
Okay.
because the safety car was out when we hadn't even got 10 minutes on the board. So
Fine.
you know, you can delay the arrival of that by a short bit, but no, absolutely spot on. Right, our race leader 3 seconds clear. Now, having a look at Wolfgang Triller, number 3 in 9th place. He's got Eric de Donker having a really good run at him from behind, the bright orange nose. Then there's a little bit gap back to 10th place, Motorsport 98. We've got Team Virage in the pits serving its drive-through penalty, and a challenge for 10th and 11th place is United Autosport's John Schaumann getting very close to Rob Hodes, and if there's a slip up, there's someone waiting right behind them as well. Jacques Wolf for CD Sport trying to make his way up. Rinaldi Racing, Steve Parrow getting in. So this is what the drivers love. They love this circuit, they love these P3 cars, and they love having a really, really good scrap. And it's a circuit that does have places you can pass. Makes it better still.
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, a real spectacle to watch a car in isolation go round this place. But as you said, when it generates side-by-side racing, several points on the same lap, a delight to watch an endurance race around here. This is just the starter of the weekend, if you like. A couple of hours of Michelin Le Mans Cup action, and the European Le Mans Series finale happens tomorrow, 11 o'clock local time for the start, through till 3 o'clock. And temperatures expected to be in a similar range, actually, late 20s, early 30s. No rain on the right radar whatsoever. I know they are famous last words, but the whole of the week looks clear in terms of weather, which is great this time of year. So half an hour done of a 2-hour race, and Nicola Molini leading by 3.5 seconds as we head back to the pits and Hayley Edmonds for this update.
So I'm back down here with Lawrence. Our last interview was cut short because the action restarted on the race. Now, just with regards to Laurent Gloria being replaced by Wolfgang Triller, who's currently out there, I mean, are you confident, you know, that he can continue the pace and potentially help you win the championship? Sorry, I know you can't hear me very well.
Unfortunately, I didn't hear a lot, but Wolfgang is doing good out there, and yeah, at the moment we're just fighting around out there. It's not too easy for us, but Wolfgang is doing a good pace, and we will do everything to win this championship.
Thank you very much.
More drama now out on track with a spin for the number 2 TFT Porsche, and that was the one challenging Rene Mastronardi, although Mastronardi was responding well with a couple of fastest laps within his class, virtually back to back, and the 2 car now stranded on the runoff area at turn 14. If that car stalled, Nicky Leutwiler struggling to get the engine going again, that could be another safety car.
But at that point, I look at the timing screens and just say, remember this, 3.5 seconds was the advantage for our race leader, Nicola Molini, over Rory Penton, and it could get closed up. Fabien Laverne has banged in almost the fastest lap of the race, just a whisker off the best by Molini. He's picked his way up to 7th place from the tail of the pack. His next target, 3 seconds up the track, but lapping 2 and a bit seconds slower. So Tony Wells is maybe on borrowed time in 6th place. And by the way, no further action for the incident involving car number 5. Johnny mentioned that was the CD Sport Michael Jensen car that ended up in the gravel up there at the top of the hill in turn 11. But that is good, no further action for that. And still fierce battling, the Porsche going all over again. The battle for 2nd place, Rory Penton and Maurice Krantz. Krantz seems to have quick laps and then some slower laps, but right now just about got past the Porsche without too much trouble. But Johnny, whenever you get the situation when you've got a P3 car at one point on the track, you automatically think it will always be quicker than a GT car. Not always the case, is it?
Certainly not. Yeah, and it's about knowing who is in the car at any one point to judge your pace against maybe a bronze-rated driver who is getting more and more used to a prototype. And then when you get the quick guys into the GTs, you do get that overlapping between the 2 classes. A common thing. Pressure really being applied here by Moritz Kratz, who's right on the boot lid of Rory Penton. This is for 2nd and 3rd as they get to the little the shelf across the top then between 13 and 14. Big wiggle from Moritz Kratz there as he momentarily lost downforce as the cars rely more so on their mechanical grip rather than the invisible hand pushing them onto the road surface. And then they work their way through 15. So this is playing very nicely into the hands of Nicola Molini, who's obviously got the measure of Rory Penttinen, and leaving the Finn to have to deal with Moritz Krantz, who is providing more than a distraction in third place.
But anyone in the top three has to be heading for a good helping of points, because the car that's in fourth place, the Rinaldi Racing entry of Alexander Matchel, is 15 seconds in arrears. That's astonishing. It wasn't that long ago we had the safety car with the field bunched up. But for Moritz Krantz, his best finish so far this year was a fourth place in the opening rounds of the championship at Paul Ricard. But since then, his best has been a ninth. He's now got Alex Capadia joining him for a second weekend running, and that's a very strong teammate to have. So this could be their best result of the season, and it could even be second place. Could even be first.
That's true. The Porsche, by the way, that was having a moment on the exit of 14, is back in the race. Just caught a glimpse of that behind these two cars. But the number 2 Porsche has lost a lap as a result of that. Although that's on the leaders, isn't it? So it's only 12 seconds away from John Hartshorn, if I'm reading that correctly. I'd expected Nicky Lauterville to have maybe lost more time than that, but he obviously fired the car back into life. Very different lines coming out of 11, and that was Moritz Krantz trying to find an outside line. It would be brave, though, to overtake around the outside of 13. I'm not sure I've ever seen that done, but it doesn't mean it can't be possible. And now he's trying to fashion himself the inside line into 14. Krantz just looks slightly quicker than Penttinen in this phase of the race.
Yeah, Penttinen was lucky to hold that, ran wide over the crest at turn 11. You can see him just trying to wait to find some traction as he went into the compression. But unfortunately, if you're only presented with the outside line, more by luck than judgment, one would say. But Rory Penttinen holds on, but the gap to the leader is now at 7.2 seconds. That's been almost doubled in the space of one lap. Our race leader did a 1 minute 38.5, and the next two in second and third, 1 minute 40.5. So again, 2 seconds. That advantage, he can open it out at will, but that lap was a bit of a gift for him. And all along, Alexander Matchel, as we said, about 15 seconds down. But Fabien Laverne has picked off Tony Wells. He's up into 6th place overall. His next target is Maurice Smith. He's just a second down on him. So Laverne having just a wonderful day. Alex Capadia down in the pit lane watching on, really urging the Mulnus Motorsport car with Moritz Krantz on board to get up past Rory Penttinen. Coming up to John Hartshorn, he keeps out of their way. Was there a little bit of a gain? Yes, for the chasing car, number 21, Moritz Krantz said, thank you very much. Right, I'm on the tail of you now, Rory Penttinen. Where are you going to get loose next? Yeah,
I did think the Ferrari they were catching might provide more of an opportunity than it did. John actually very gentlemanly in pulling off the racing line and allowing both through in one move. But you're right, the 21 car got marginally closer. So Alex Capadia expected into the Mulner Motorsport Duquesne for the second part of the race. And remember, these cars can pit in the next 15 minutes. But we don't want them to do that just yet, because this is such an enjoyable battle to witness.
And latest warning on the screen, black and white flag for driver of car 26. That's driver in second place. It's Rory Penttinen, and the team will be saying, right, do not run wide. There are certain corners on the circuit in particular when cars are tending to do that. And now, car 55, abusing track limits. Driver of that is Rinaldi Racing. It's the driver in 4th place, Alexander Matchel. So the driver in 2nd, the driver in 4th have got to be on their best behaviour. Half a gap was all it took for Fabien Laverne. Big sharp intake of breath from both of us, Johnny, but actually full marks to Maurice Smith for just getting out of the way in that.
Yeah, had to do similar to what Jack Wolf did earlier on and think, blimey, this guy is not hanging around. I'll open the door for you because you're just going to provide me with no peace and potential for contact as well. So better to let a quicker car in this phase of the race go. And then, of course, when Christophe Cresp gets into it, no disrespect, but he won't be able to pedal quite as quickly as Fabien Laverne, who, remember, came through the GT ranks with the Ferrari team a couple of years ago, Lusick Racing, wasn't it, as the sort of Super Silver, and has taken to prototype racing like a duck to water as well. It's not more concerned about the 55 car. Yes, that's been confirmed now as a drive-through penalty. He'd been reported to the stewards for breaching track limits, and that normally precedes a more serious message from race control to say that car's going to have to come in and drive through the pit lane.
Yes, it's not the occasional, it's the wording, the constant abuse of track limits. And at the moment, Matchel has got, well, he's 3 and a bit seconds up the track. In fact, he's been running on his own for a large number of laps, adrift by 14, 15, now 16 seconds from that battle for second place between Penttinen and Krantz. And he was comfortably ahead of Maurice Smith, but now he's got a much quicker target as Fabien Laverne is homing in a car that has been like a heat-seeking missile in this race. It's trained on those at the front. Again, replay of the action, very, very busy down in the heat of the action. Steve Parrow in the second of the Ronaldo racing cars, just as thought, well, he's being ganged up on by the United Autosport duo.
Yeah, so being overtaken by Daniel Schneider and John Schaumann also in the queue, and also a couple of moments ago, up the inside went the number 6 car, which is the Jack Wolf machine on Daniel Schneider. And there was an off-track moment for Maurice Smith. Didn't catch this at the time, but he's fallen back to 6th position as a result of that. Now, I think Fabien Laverne had already got past him, so it can't have been contact with Fabien, but maybe just being sent offline briefly to allow that car number 27 through. That meant he was out in the marbles and then struggled at the next corner. Tricky to tell.
Absolutely tricky to tell. I want to see where he comes through at the end of the lap, because Wolfgang Triller and Tony Wells, or more to the points, Tony Wells and Wolfgang Triller in the correct order. They're running at the moment in 7th and 8th. Will that have moved them up ahead of Maurice up into 6th and 7th? So for the championship leading crew, it could be another couple of points, and they'll be grabbing everything they can get at DKR Engineering.
No, Smith's still good for 6th place. Okay. Just gone through the split now, but Tony's 5 seconds or so behind. And Maurice Smith could still be recovering, so needs to get a wiggle on. Speaking of wiggles, there was a big one there in the Mulliner Motorsport car for Moritz Krantz. That's not the first time that car has shown just how hard it's being driven. There's now a black and white flag, though, for Fabien Laverne now for abusing track limits. Well, he's using every little bit of track available to him, and sometimes too much, to get by all of these cars. That's what's put him into 5th place.
Well, could be, but if he picks up another warning, he'll be the car he's chasing is due a drive-through penalty. He could be following it in and out of the pit lane as well. So message to Fabien Laverne, brilliant job, done wonderfully to come up from the back of the field. Don't blow all that good work.
So Moritz Krantz possibly starting to run short of ideas to get by Rory Penttinen. No doubt about the extra speed that I feel the Mulliner Motorsport Duquesne is carrying, but if you can't get by the Graf car, it might all come to nothing. Alex Capadia, who will be installed into the 21, still obviously eagerly spectating to see where the car in the order will be when he has to take charge of it. But certainly they're pushing this set of Michelin tyres to the ragged edge as well as they head out of turn 5. Penttinen, elbows out, still driving defensively, but perfectly within his rights to be able to do that and not put a wheel wrong so far.
Well, the driver who really hasn't put a wheel wrong is our race leader, Nicola Molini. He's now 10 seconds to good. He just banged in the fastest lap of the race. Alexander Matchell has just served that drive-through penalty, so he's no longer in 4th. He's got a 1 in front. He's 14th. Unfortunately for him, and don't forget that promotes Fabien Laverne up into 4th place, but he's almost got the sword of Damocles. He's got one more. Well, no, he's had his final warning. The next one will be a drive-through, but it also means DKR Engineering, the championship leading duo, Wolfgang Triller, come on board this weekend in place of Jean Glorieux, and he is up into 7th place. Lovely haul of points coming his way. If he's anywhere above 10th, it's pretty much his. All Nicola Molini can do is continue to lead the race, and has every hope that Edward Cowhaup, his teenage friend teammate, can do the job, and we know he can. Look at their last 5 races: first, second, first, second, and heading for first here. A run, if they hadn't tripped up in the first round and got a no score, it could be their title. But that's where we are here at the final round.
It's been sublime consistency from DKR Engineering. Matthias Kaiser down in the garage there with Graf, watching his teammate Rory Penttinen as nearly the Mulliner Motorsport car spins off the road. So much power that Moritz Krantz is applying coming out of turn 3. The other thing I think I saw was the 55 as it rejoined with its left side wheels right on the blend line. It depends how cruel the stewards are feeling, because technically that line was crossed, but it was Michelin tyres right along the white line. So let's wait and see. Don't want to speak too soon as far as that's concerned, because Matchell has already had to come in to serve a penalty, and that's put him down to 14th position.
Again, overtaking, it's down to the first corner, and it's just great on this circuit. That's a battle between Nielsen Racing. No, it's not. It's United Autosport, so the best place of those, John Schaumann. But that run down to turn 1, it provides so many opportunities. Overtaking relatively rare, but you've got half a chance. And if the car in front runs a little bit wide, you go through the kink at turn 2, and you're on the right side of the circuit going into the hairpin at turn 3. And again, whenever you get a garage camera and you see the driver who's due to take over, you see their head in their hands, they're alternating between delight as their co-driver's doing a good job and then despair or concern as things go on. And they're not aware they do it. They're looking at the timing screens and the monitors like we are, but they're living, will I get to take over a car to go for a podium, or will I just have to placate my teammate who's got it very wrong and stuck it off into the gravel? But so far so good for Mulner Motorsport, because certainly Maurice Krantz continues to attack, but Rory Penttinen has been soaking this up. You pointed out, John, he's had a couple of twitchy old moments, but he's sort of got it together, and now the twitchy moments are coming from Maurice Krantz. I sort of sense a bit of, not desperation, but certainly I've got to make my mark, I've got to get through. But you're heading for your best result of the year, so just put that in to temper the equation.
Yes, and with Alex Capadia to come, you need to give Alex a good foundation to continue on at roughly halfway in the race. But yeah, the drag race coming out of turn 3 is fabulous to watch, with Maurice Krantz on more than one occasion at 45 degrees to the desired direction of travel, as they now head along the short straight between 4 and 5 and begin the ascent. They're still absolutely nose to tail, by the way. Penttinen just ahead of Maurice Krantz for second and third. Meanwhile, a flood of cars headed by Jacques Wolf arriving at turn 1. So Rob Hodes is in this queue, along with Steve Parrow, John Schaumann, and a recovering Alexander Matchell at the back in the green and yellow car.
Yeah, Matchell should be able to catch them. Will he be able to get past them? They're very busy. They're occupying a lot of track. One thing we haven't really talked about for a while is the pace of Rino Mastronardi. He's 17th overall, but he's leading the GT3 class, but he's got 18 seconds over Michel Broniczewski. Nicky Leutwiler has caught and passed John Hartshorn after Leutwiler spun the Porsche. He's up to third in class, but he's 45 seconds down on Broniczewski. So in terms, Rino Mastronardi already has the title in the bag. His teammate Giacomo Piccini is second on points. They will end this championship first and second on points, because the outside hopes were Broniczewski and Leutwiler, but right now they have to take victory to even close the gap appreciably. It really is Mastronardi's year.
Very good final sector at the end of the previous lap from Rory Penttinen, so just edged a little bit more of a gap back to Maurice Krantz. I wonder whether Maurice is feeling the ill effects of those Michelin tyres that were pushed very hard in the early phase of the stint. They've only got 5 minutes or so to go if they want to pit at the earliest opportunity. We are 7 seconds away from the 46-minute marker, so 4 more minutes to go before we'll see probably a flood of pit stops for the LMP3s. Steve Parrow, having ridden the storm actually, compared to at least one of the 2 United Autosports cars. Yes, that's dropped back now, hasn't it, the John Schaumann car. But Rob Hodes was able to get ahead of Sparrow for Rinaldi Racing, and Rob Hodes then now starting to pressurise Jacques Wolf for that 10th place. Yeah, and just at the background of the shot, you can see the yellow and green livery on the black bodywork of Alexander Matchell's Rinaldi Racing entry. He is now moved up ahead of John Schaumann, and his next target, his own teammate, Steve Parrow. Another great lap from Rino Mastronardi in the GT3 leading Ferrari. He's just done a 1:22.649, which represents the best GT3 lap of the race. Something like the third or fourth time he's done that now, so finding speed all the time, and just over 20 seconds now the margin back to Michel Broniczewski. It's about 40-odd seconds back to a recovering Nicky Leutwiler in the Porsche, so there's the evidence that he did lose a lot of time at turn 14 in the spin. Just finely treated. We haven't seen our race leader for a while, Nicola Morlini. We catch her at the moment in which she's trying to emulate the great rally stars of the past, getting the tail out loose. That was down coming out of turn 3. Managed to hold on to it, but every lap he's been eking his advantage. 11.6 seconds last time around. All abusing track limits. Who's latest? It's car number 10. The driver is Rob Hodes, who's seen him in that battle with Jack Wolf. And clearly another person being watched. There is nowhere to hide out on the circuit. There's nowhere to hide for Rory Penttinen. He's just being harried by the Mulner Motorsport Duqueine, with Maurice Krantz having just his best race of the year. But one really does feel he has been hammering those tyres, trying desperately to find an advantage. Rory Penttinen is trying to stay as smooth as possible. Seems to be paying off for now, but you're quite right, Johnny. We're getting towards the end of the stints. The co-drivers are getting their helmets on, getting ready. That dreadfully nervous moment before you get your turn in the car. However long you've been racing, if you don't feel the nerves, then you're not going to be exactly at your very best, are you, when you get out there? So Fabian Laverne up to 4th position now, still trying to chase down these two, and you have to think that these two won't be going as fast as they might be in clear air on their own. So that in turn will be holding both Penttinen and Krantz up, but well, of course, Laverne could stay out for a little bit longer as well. The minimum drive time applies to either of the drivers in the combination, as Nicola Molini's just done the fastest lap of the race. Great effort this late on in the stint. The car's nice and light now as far as the fuel's concerned, and a 1:37.880 is faster than even Laverne.
Yeah, I think Laverne has possibly plateaued. I think he certainly worked his tyres very, very hard indeed. But, you know, remarkable job from the tail of the field to get up to 4th place. In fact, the top first car was lapping exactly the same pace as the next three, which was Penttinen, Krantz and Laverne, but then Molini got a bit bored. We saw how hard he was trying. That tail getting kicked out, was it 2 laps ago, coming out of turn 3, but 1:37.8, it's not good enough. Why can I say that? Because he's going faster still on this lap. First sector, fastest of anybody. And so he really is laying it down, but he knows every fraction of a second he could gain could be important, because, of course, they're the outside championship hope. Down in the pit lane, it's getting very busy. But the championship leading car with Wolfgang Triller is in 7th place. If it stays there, if Molini and his teammate Edward Coulthard win for Cool Racing, it will not be enough.
No. Oh, this might be an opportunity finally for Moritz Krantz to get ahead of Rory Penttinen, ahead of the stops, because off the road goes the 74 Ferrari of Michel Broniszewski. That's second in GT3. And again, very gentlemanly actually to provide the space. I think he could tell the heat from this battle. Didn't want to get involved with it and just drove off the road in the end to allow Penttinen through. By the time they get to the end of this lap and the pit lane entry, they could dive in, and then this will automatically turn into a race on pit road, albeit, of course, these cars are restricted to time-limited stops. Happy for more, though. They're going to stay out, Rory Penttinen and Moritz Krantz, 2nd and 3rd overall.
And indeed, that lap completed by race leader Nicola Molini. He's 14.774 seconds the good. A new fastest lap of the race, a 10th of a second, almost better than his one before. Consistent, super fast Molini. Cool driver in a Cool Racing car. One of the 2 Cool Racing cars, the sister car, somewhat further down the order. Maurice Smith had that little moment, but still good enough for 5th place at the moment. He's way down on Fabian Laverne, but equally 7 seconds clear of a charge from behind it now. Milner Motorsport going down the inside. Moritz Krantz has been waiting. How many laps they've done? 28. He's been waiting 27 laps to do that.
Yep, but a great overtake in the end. A little bit of give and take required from Rory Penttinen. Last thing he wants is a damaged race car, so gave him the racing room. But pinched him down to the apex at the same time, and Moritz Krantz finally getting ahead, and Alex Kapadia will be leaping with joy, I'm sure, down in the pit lane. He's moments away from taking over the 21.
Yeah, we've now got 4 cars in the pit lane. We've got Cool Racing, Maurice Smith has come in, Tony Wells, and look at the replay. He's been almost as close to that many times. Rory Penttinen maybe slightly napping, maybe starting to think about the pit stops coming up, but once he saw that Krantz was coming down the inside, he just did not turn into the corner, thought, let's not have contact. So Matt Bell just taking over from Maurice Smith, and in fact it's really the top 4 runners didn't come in, and those behind pretty much all have. So it's Nicola Molini leading by 15.6 seconds from Moritz Krantz. Rory Penttinen now down into 3rd place, and then 17 seconds further back, Fabian Laverne. Yeah, his performance is very much plateaued, a good plateau, but he had got it from the tail of the field up to 4th place.
Now you'll spot that these pit stops aren't being done that hurriedly, because the tyres will be changed, a splash of fuel to go in as well, and then it's just a matter of waiting for the time to tick by. Once you've installed your new driver, you have to be careful not to breach the 2 minute and 5 second pit lane minimum pit stop time. So as long as everyone is kind of very well rehearsed and all of the jobs of the various mechanics are carried out, then you should have a bit of spare time at the end just to watch the car, look at the car, maybe clean the windscreen, very minor jobs like that, and then send it. The tricky thing is then knowing how long it takes your car to move from your pit bay to the end of the pit lane, and it's very easy to cut short the pit stop by just a 10th of a second, and that was all it would take to have to come back in again to do a drive-through.
And another thing you can do at your pit stop to muck things up is do what Jack Wolf potentially has done, which is speed in the pit lane. He's under investigation. That CD Sport has been a real up and down race for the crew, because of course Mikkel Jensen has yet to go out. We saw the car being pushed away. We thought it would come out to play in Michael Jensen in the second part of the race, but it has not, so there may have been an electrical problem as well. Car 27 reported for constant abuse of track limits. That's Fabien Laverne, that's still on the screen, but our race leader diving into the pits, Nicola Morlini. His season is over. He's now got to rely on his teammate Edward Kauhaup, taking a third win for them this year in the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and just hope, all they can do is win this race, and hope and pray in the nicest way possible that DKR Engineering don't continue in 7th place, because if they do that to the finish, the title is most definitely theirs.
Fabien Laverne heading through the final corner, deciding not to pit just yet. I did expect him to stay out for a touch longer. Remember, we've still got to see Christophe Cresp at the wheel of this car for 50 minutes, but it is going to have to make another pit stop, and this is because of the constant abuse of track limits. We did warn Fabien Laverne that he was being watched. There was a black and white flag initially, and now that has jumped to a drive-through penalty. So all the hard work from Fabien Laverne, some great overtakes during the stint as well. It's been splendid to watch, but it's effectively going to come to nothing.
That's always the dividing line, isn't it? But if you said I did it once, I was unlucky, but it's constant. That's the word they have to remember. They have had warnings as well. It doesn't just come at the first time you do it. You get a series of warnings, increasingly serious, increasingly clear. Right now, down at Cool Racing in the pits, as Moritz Krantz continues in the lead of the race in the Milner Motorsport Duquesne. Will be coming in very soon for that pit stop, but it's looking all cool, calm and collected. Nicola Molini has had his run. It's now the turn of the teenage star Edward Kauhaup to see if he can take it over and go on to their third win.
Through the final corner, turn 15, comes Moritz Krantz. Will he decide to pit at this point? No, because he's got open road in front of him and stays there in the race lead then. That'll be 31 laps ticked off. And Alex Kapadia just needs to make sure he's behind the wheel of that car for the 50 minutes. So clearly very happy out front, and one of the fastest cars on the racetrack currently. 2 Duquesnes in the top 3 when you include Alexander Matchell then in the 55. But that car is the best part of a minute away from the current race leader. As Fabien Laverne comes in, I think this... Well, do they do the drive-through first and then the driver change, or the other way around? He'll only have a set number of laps, of course, to serve the drive-through penalties, normally 3 from memory. So maybe get that out of the way first and then do the driver change. We'll find out just as soon as that car re-emerges and we can time the stop. Meanwhile, the earlier race leader, number 37, has made its first stop of a couple and rejoins in 5th place. And that was the drive-through for Fabien Laverne. So MV2S will probably come back in again next time around to do their mandatory stop. Let's hear from Nicola Molini, former race leader with Hayley Edmonds.
I'm joined here by Nicola Molini, driver of car number 37 for Cool Racing. Nicola, you did a fantastic job of holding that first position after getting pole. Tell us about how your stint went.
The pole position was the goal, because if we miss the pole, the championship is over before the start of the race. We did the job, and now we have a 10 or 15 seconds of gap from the second place. But we don't have the choice. It's not in your hands. We have to wait in which position the DKR car will finish.
And that's right, because Edouard is now in Edouard's hands to hold that top position. And potentially, if DKR don't hold on, if they get less than 7th, you might win the championship. I mean, you're going to be watching it. What's going through your head right now? What are you really aiming for here?
Sorry, I did not understand everything, but yeah, the DKR car is now 7th, so it's not enough. Edouard must stay in lead, and after we cross the finger and see what happens for DKR.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, well, there'll be thoughts definitely racing through Nicola Molini's head. He's a real talent in himself. You know, he's the bronze of the two, but a former Swiss Formula Renault champion and has been in the ELMS since 2018. So I wonder whether there's a slight drama down here at Milner Motorsport. They needed to wheel the car back down the pit lane because presumably Moritz Krantz missed the pit box. So the team were launched into action just to wheel that car so that it was within the reach of the fuel hose. And now that nozzle has been connected. So it shouldn't actually, well, in the grand scheme of things, affect anything, because they're doing it within an envelope of 2 minutes and 5 seconds. And I think they should still be able to meet that.
Just always interesting when you get the second crop of drivers climbing on board, and Alessandro Giretti, 18-year-old Italian, got in and just banged in the fastest lap of the race on his first flying lap. He's been racing Formula 4 in the German series, a bit of Formula 3 in Asia over the winter. That has since been superseded first by Matt Bell for Cool Racing, the car he took over from Maurice Smith. Just taking a look at a replay on the screen again. Drivers running very, very wide out of turn 11, certainly scary. And now the new fastest lap of the race, Motorsport 98. Dino Lunardi took over from Eric de Donker. He's down in 10th place. That will rise up a little bit once everybody's served their pit stops, and more to the point, people like Fabien Laverne have served the drive-through penalty. But suddenly seeing laps low 1 minute 37s going faster and faster. Don't forget they're fueled to do half the race effectively. And so these are quick times with a heavy fuel tank, but of course the advantage of fresh rubber.
Well, that was Edward Cohope running a touch wide out of 11 actually, so there's an idea of how hard he's pushing straight out of the blocks. Laverne's done his drive-through, I reckon. 28 seconds is point to point, in and out. So what they haven't done yet, a bit clumsy here down at Iron Links, trying to get the tyre gun around an open door, and just about managed to do that.
Well, it's sudden. It's not quite panic down at Iron Links, but getting a driver between the air gun and the wheel, and the door being open, and the mechanic running around and clunking it, a little bit hurried, but they had a good advantage. It was a brilliant opening stint by Rino Mastronardi. Of course, it's going to be finished off by Piccini, but didn't really need to do that.
Well, no, but bear in mind they've got to soak up an extra 29 seconds.
Yes, of course
so
they have.
That will very much equalise the field. 74, which is doing the chasing, only had to serve an extra 13 seconds, so that's a difference of 16, isn't it, that the 74 will gain effectively, an additional to the mandatory 2 minutes and 5. So that's the reason for the rush. But of course, again, they're doing it within a time limit, so that's the reason why you don't rush it, because you know you've got to be down there for so long. Anyway, no harm, no foul, and thankfully it didn't start shredding the tyre cable.
Yeah, of course, you know, less speed, more haste, or vice versa.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, car number 10, that is at the moment in the hands. Just Nielsen Racing, Garrett Griss has taken over from Rob Holtz. Report the door. The left-hand side door is slightly open, or so it seems. And if that's the case, and the driver can't close it, it has to be brought in for repair. So these tiny little things can just take your result, screw it up into a ball, and throw it in the bin, can't they?
Very easily indeed, and with very little warning too. So Mastronardi handing over to Giacomo Piccini, and they have done a 2 minutes and 36 seconds stop, so that's fine. Actually took them an extra couple of seconds, so that was maybe taking into account the slight hiccup they had with the tyre hose around an open door. As we're back to, well, this is deja vu, isn't it? But the other way around, because the Graf car for third position muscles its way by the Mullner Motorsport car of Alex Capadia. So we've got different drivers, but very much the same course of action, with Matthias Kaiser picking off the place.
Yeah, very, very tidy manoeuvre. I just waved the flag briefly for Alessandro Giretti. He set the fastest lap of the race. That was deposed. He's now set an even faster one, 1 minute 36.9 seconds. So the young Italian for Team Virage. The car's way down the order, but really, that's super, super impressive to get a hold of a car like this on a track like this, where you're working super hard with all this wonderful gradient change, and yet he seems to have, you know, ducked to water is the phrase that springs to mind.
Yeah, and really good to see a driver this early on in his career then adapting to this situation and to that particular car as well. Now, Alex Capadia, I'm not sure whether he's 100% happy with the Mullner Motorsport car, because he's being dropped by Matthias Kaiser, something I didn't expect. No problem with the overtake at all, because you can be late on the brakes down into 5 and be caught unaware slightly, but that Mullner car, having shown great speed in the opening stint, just seems to be disappearing slightly. They are fully laden cars, we should remember now, but on a new set of tyres, and the fight that Moritz Krantz was able to take to Rory Penttinen isn't necessarily there for Capadia.
Now, just remember, in the first 5 or 6 laps of the race, you know, sort of around the time at either side of the safety car period, that Mullner Motorsport actually dropped back for a couple of laps, a little bit, but certainly looking at the top of the hill at turn 14 before you sweep down through that long right-hander off the start-finish straight, the front end of Capadia's car, the Duquesne just didn't want to play the game, and that very much is advantage to Matthias Kaiser there. Kaiser made the overtaking manoeuvre, but is pulling away. Didn't expect to see that.
The new gap in the GT3 category is 14 seconds, so despite the extra 16 that the number 8 car had to serve in the pits, and that is because it leads the championship. Remember, the top 5 cars are kind of all mapped back to the team that is in 6th, and you do a rather complicated calculation to work out the extra seconds that the top 5 cars in the championship have to serve. We've only got 4 in this race, in fact, so everybody was on some degree of extra seconds, and that served to equalise the fight at the head of GT3 a little bit. David Perel will be looking at that 14 seconds, saying, well, I've got the best part of an hour to attack it. Problem is, the man he's chasing is Giacomo Piccini, who very rarely makes an error.
Now, the jam in the sandwich, the meat in the sandwich, whatever you want to say, but certainly in the middle of the sandwich is DKR Engineering's Lawrence Hoare. We heard from him, it's the battle for 6th place. He's in 7th, which his teammate Wolfgang Triller has held, but he's being pushed very hard by the black and orange car. Dino Lunardi behind him, Colin Noble in front. He's trying to catch the Scott, but really the body language of the cars at the moment is Lunardi is the quickest of this trio, and he's going to try his utmost to work his way round. Done some little adding up of points and taking away of points and totting up the totals, and if DKR Engineering finish 11th, that's out of the points, but it's still enough for them to take the title, even if Edward Cowhoup can go into the lead of this race and keep it. He's not yet in the lead, but the car that is, Fabien Laverne, has served a drive-through penalty, but has to make a driver change, and that will blow it all wide open. Everyone else will move up another position, so Cowhoup will move into the lead of the race, but it does mean that Lawrence Hoare and DKR Engineering will go from 7th up to 6th.
Yes, so that will change the order for the team that has the advantage in the championship. And you know, it depends how long Fabien Laverne is in the pit lane. The gap from Laverne, current race leader, back to Lawrence Hoare is well over a minute. They have to spend, remember, just over 2 minutes in the pit lane. But that doesn't necessarily mean they lose that full 2 minutes, because they are still moving down the pit lane, at least for the first bit at the end of the pit stop. So yes, it'll be interesting to see where the MV2S car heads back into the order, and then what sort of speed Christophe Cresp can offer. You've got the further complication of another stop that the LMP3s will all have to make there, remember. Once the 20 minutes to go marker is passed, so you can't do that extra stop any earlier than with the 20 minutes on the clock.
Again, just looking at some little cameo roles, and we've been talking about Alessandro Giretti. He's in 14th place, 1 place further up, Nicola Varone, Argentinian teenager. He's only, in fact, he's going to be 20 at the end of this year, but not yet. But he's also one of the quickest drivers in the race, in the car ahead. So they're another newcomer to P3 racing, and they're really, really enjoying this challenge. There's 11 seconds between them. In fact, Varone is much closer to anyone else. He's got Dominic Schwager as his target. But these guys are getting in and getting on. Fabulous.
Yeah, really good to witness, and you know, these are names potentially that will do big things in the future of the Michelin Le Mans Cup, and then onward into the ELMS, and maybe even at the 24 Hours of Le Mans as well, having cut their teeth in the lower categories. Out of turn 4, 3 cars absolutely together, so Noble in the 7 Nielsen car, being chased by Lawrence Hoare in the orange and black, who has a little bit of a look at the inside of turn 5. I don't think that was a full-blooded attempt at an overtake, but just sows the seed of doubt in Colin's mind. And then also in the queue, Dino Lunardi, who you mentioned, is really pushing on very quickly indeed in the Motorsport 98 car.
Lunardi now being delayed by the 2 cars in front of him. He caught them very easily, hasn't found a passing manoeuvre, but you can see that Lawrence Hoare is desperately trying to pick his way past. He doesn't need to get past Colin Noble, but I think he wants to get ahead, because then he won't be attacked by Dino Lunardi anymore. Lunardi a much better run out of turn 11, steering to the left and then to the right as they go down the hill, trying to steer clear of a little bit of gravel that's been kicked out. I noticed to the side of the circuit, a few pebbles could make all of the difference, not so much for tipping a car around, but for picking up a potential puncture.
Another black and white flag, this time being shown in the direction of Geoffrey Denarder, and car number 6 is up the inside. Oh, very nearly some contact between Dino Lunardi and Laurence Hoare, I think there was a little bit, and that's the last thing DKR Engineering need to be thinking about. Better maybe to let the 98 car go, because still an 8th place finish, which could be 7th depending on where Fabien Laverne feeds back in, that will be enough for them to clinch another title. So coming out of 14, definitely no touch, but then later on, no, they did avoid each other, thankfully. But that was a bit too close to call for Laurence Hoare.
Yes, I really want a camera in the DKR Engineering garage to find most of the team members lying on the floor, fanning their faces in relief at that, because nothing wrong at all from their man Laurence Hoare, but Dino Lunardi, he's obviously got eyes set on a higher target, a loftier target. So Fabien Laverne still leads the race. The battle we're looking at on screen, Graf versus Molnar Motorsport. It's been the story of the race in terms of drivers who just cannot stay away from each other. These two cars with their first two drivers were nose to tail in the battle for second, and now Matthias Kaiser and a coming back Alex Capardi. Had those couple of dip laps and now he's got it up to speed. I think it's possibly also the way that Duquesne puts the heat into its tyres and maybe is better on its rubber later in the race, but certainly the Ligiers you can attack from the moment you leave the pits, and that's I think why we were seeing some really quick laps from the likes of Giretti and Varoni down towards the tail in their cars. The Duquesne takes a little more time to get itself up to speed.
That's a good observation, and I think Alex was fully aware of that as well. Loads of opposite lock required there from the man from Bedfordshire heading out of the right-hander at turn 4 as CD Sports, no, beg pardon, race leader Fabien Laverne for MV2S Racing is into the pit lane. This is the expected stop to make sure that Christophe Cresp gets the drive time done. Remember, he's already done 5 or so minutes at the start, so you might be thinking, oh, 50 minutes, they're running it close on the clock, but it is a total, it's an aggregate drive time, however many times that Christophe Cresp is installed in the car. So he was in for the first stint. I think originally they'd planned for him to be in to the 50-minute mark, but then when the race didn't pan out quite as planned, they decided to utilise the strategy a little bit and put Fabien Laverne in much earlier than expected.
So, championship still to be settled, but with DKR Engineering running in 8th, that is fine. But what wasn't fine for a second for Laurence Hoare was the fact that he had Dino Lunardi right up his inside and could have just shoved him a little bit wide if he'd rotated into the gravel on the outside. The laws of physics playing their role. It would have been a dreadful way to end this season, but we've got just under 50 minutes remaining, and the car that is the challenging car, Edward Cowhaupt, has taken over. The number 37 entry from Cool Racing. Brilliant opening stint from Nicola Molini. And Cowhaupt just starting to wind the pace up. He's not being threatened. He's got a large margin over the best of the rest, which is Matthias Kaiser. But he just has to remember, track limits, keep it between them. That's what he does. There's no pit stop coming. Well, in fact, rubbish. There is a pit stop coming, Johnny, of course. Let's reiterate that they've got to have another run into the pits. So that provides another opportunity for someone to do what Jack Wolf did and potentially speed and unravel the whole season when you're pitching for a title. So keep it neat, keep it tidy.
And also when the fuel goes in, I'm pretty sure the engine's got to be turned off, has it not? And maybe the car restarts on its own, and what if all of a sudden the engine doesn't fire back into life? Race engines aren't particularly a fan of being turned off and on and off and on, although of course at Le Mans that is part of the design process, because they must be doing that, the LMP2s at least, so many times through the course of the race. But it'll just be that element of doubt that DKR Engineering desperately do not want. They're in 8th position currently. That is still fine for the championship. It's closer than they would have wanted to be running it. But even if Edward Cowhaupt and Nicola Molini win the motor race, 10th place or better is fine for DKR Engineering. If they start scoring just half a point though, that's not going to be enough, and they would unbelievably they would lose the championship by just half a point. But we've got a bit of time to go before we get there. And the other thing that Laurence Hoare needs to do is again stay within the track limits, because it can be very easy to earn yourself a drive-through penalty if you start breaching those too readily. Just over 45 minutes to go, and still the closest fight on track remains between the 26 and the 21, whether it's been Penttinen versus Krantz or now Kaiser versus Capadia. These two cars have been inseparable pretty much all race long. So they head down the short straight between turn 4 and 5. And this was the point on the circuit that Krantz finally made his manoeuvre for second place at the time, prior to the pit stops. We've got another 27 minutes or so to go before we will get to the point where these cars will have to pit again. Remember, as soon as 100 minutes are completed in the race, that leaves you available to take your final 85-second stop, and that's for fuel only for LMP3. GTs are fine now to the finish, unless they have a drama, of course, but as far as the regulations are concerned, those 4 GT3 cars in the race can continue on to the finish.
Right, Hayley Edmonds has just sent up a message from the pitch. She just talked to Lawrence Hawes, engineer at DKR Engineering. They've said, stay where you are. You don't need to do anything. Stay in that position. Don't try and challenge Dilo Lunardi. Where you are will be good for the title, even if Edward Cowhaupt for Cool Racing can go on to win this race. So drivers sometimes like to be told precisely what they need to do. The last thing they want to do is go around in the car and try and work out championship points as they're going. A nice, clear message from a race engineer can just allay some of those fears, and they go, right, I will just do the driving bit.
It also simplifies their approach to the race. When I was talking about the potential of being able to park the car, I didn't quite expect Cool Racing to be on this sort of form, glittering form, taking pole position earlier on today and on course for a full points haul, the 26th that will go the way of Cool Racing. So yes, they won't be looking to park the car. And the only reason that they might have thought about doing that is because poor old Jean Gloria, for family reasons, can't be here today and is going to miss out on a title that he won in 2017 for the same team, because, of course, Laurence Hoare is scoring points and Jean will not be, with Wolfgang Triller coming in to replace him. But Triller did a really good job. He's not as quick as Jean Gloria, let's face it, but he did manage to keep that car in the top 10 there or thereabouts, and has provided this great platform now for Laurence Hoare to pretty much stabilise the race. And he is, well, yes, potentially getting by Dino Lunardi, but I just sense that you just don't want to get involved in the number 98 car. Follow Lunardi all the way to the flag, and 7th place will be more than good enough.
Yeah, Lunardi started the season with Eric de Doncker with a 2nd place at Paul Ricard. Hasn't lived up to that since. Their best since then has been a 5th place, but he obviously fancies getting up towards the sharp end of the field. But out front, Edward Cowhaupt has got this race to lose. The title may be beyond him. He's 22 seconds to good. In fact, the last lap from Christophe Cresp, who's come back out into 2nd place, was 3.5 seconds slower. So Christophe will be picked off, probably this time around, by Matthias Kaiser. Cresp coming down the start-finish straight. Kaiser tucked in behind it. Well, you can guarantee Capadia, yes, he's tucked in behind Kaiser as well, because the number 26, Graf Ligier, and the 21, Mulner Motorsport, Duquesne. It's as though there's a rule saying you cannot circulate anywhere but within a second of each other. That's how it's been with the 2 pairs of drivers since the start of the race. But Capadia still attacking for Mulner Motorsport, looking to be the top Duquesne in this race. In fact, he's looking for far more than that. He'd fancy a shot at victory. But I think you have to say, with now a 25-second advantage for our race leader, Cowhaupt, the best they can go for is that 2nd place.
And the eagle-eyed amongst you may have spotted the pit stop time for Christophe Cresp's car last time, a 1:19. That's not long enough, you might say. Well, no, that's absolutely fine, because they did their longer mandatory stop earlier on during the safety car, in fact, the 2 minutes and 5. They could then do their driver change as quick as they wanted. No minimum reference time for that at all. And as long as they do the 85-second stop in the final 20 minutes, that is a legitimate place for the 27 car to be running, although it's now got company, because trying to fashion an inside line is Matthias Kaiser. Cresp isn't going to defend that overly. He'll also allow through in the same manoeuvre Alex Capadia, and that will jump Christophe Cresp from 2nd down to 4th.
Capadia had to really force the issue a little bit in the Mulner Motorsport Duquesne. Did not want to be left behind, wanted to make sure that Christophe Cresp had seen him, and whether he did or didn't, the gap was filled by Capadia. Much quicker line through the final corner by Capadia. Should be able to gain a bit of a toe from Kaiser in front of him. He needs to find another car length or so for it to tell. Though he gained a car length, he needed one more to get close enough to make a move into turn 1. Didn't happen, but he's still got over 40 minutes remaining in this race to try and take 2nd place from Matthias Kaiser and from Graf.
And no chance of either of these cars now getting to the sharp end, with Edward Cowhaupt very much enjoying his afternoon in the sunshine without the distraction of any cars in his mirrors. the focal point, definitely second place. I think if Kapadia could wriggle free, it would be interesting to compare his lap times with Edouard Kohope, but I think it'll only be a couple of tenths really in the favour of the Brit, and that's too large a margin to close up on in the remaining 40-odd minutes.
Latest driver to receive a black and white flag for abusing track limits is the driver who's just taken over. It's Ollie Hancock who's taken over from John Hartshorn, the second of the Kessel Racing Ferrari, so he has got to watch out. Now, to give you a visual, there's a gaggle of cars ahead of our race leader, Edward Cowhout, but he is coming up to cross the start-finish line now. And the chasing duo of Kaiser and Kapadia only going between turn 12, just turning into turn 13. That is roughly what a near 30-second advantage looks like for Edward Cowhope. He's down to turn 1, and they're only coming out of turn 14, so it really, really is a tidy advantage.
Yeah, and gaining more and more experience, Edouard, with all of the Michelin Le Mans Cup racing that he's been doing. Open one or two people's eyes, I'm sure, to his talents, and it'll be interesting to see what deals he can seal potentially over the winter period, looking ahead to next year's Michelin Le Mans Cup series, and then quite possibly making the move up to the European Le Mans series. He's only 18, from Donneville in France, and had done a little bit of Blancpain Endurance Series racing previously, so GT3 competitive racing with Santilok Racing, but otherwise prototype experience was zero prior to coming to this championship.
It's actually quite interesting. This year he's been racing French GT4 with one of the stars of the race, but one who transgressed, with Fabien Laverne. They've been sharing a car, CD Sport Mercedes. Very, very busy again. That was a replay of the car that Laverne was driving, handed over to Christophe Cresp, kept out of the way there.
Yeah.
But again, just looking at the pace of another driver who just keeps catching my attention because he bangs in fast laps at will. Alessandro Giretti still down in 14th place, but getting ever closer. He's now 6 seconds down on Nicolas Varron, but he was lapping faster than the race leader. And our race leader, Edward Cowhope, is all on his own. He can run the positions he wants, so put the car where he wants on the track. Just going past a gaggle of cars. He's got another trio of cars turning into turn 1 as he goes down past the pit exit, our race leader. But certainly some really good little rolls up and down the order.
So still nose to tail, these two scrapping for second and third, head out of 14 and 15. Kapadia bouncing his way over the curb there as well, but keeps it inside the white lines on the exit. Very easy indeed to make a mistake there. More flashing of the lights from the Duquesne, which does seem to be coming good through the stint, whereas the Alicia, if anything, is losing a bit of its speed. And very interesting to witness that in the early part of this particular stint, when it looked like Kapadia maybe had something wrong with the car. Wasn't used to him at all losing such ground, but that was either the tyres coming in or just a heavy Duquesne. He's not a happy Duquesne, quite possibly, but if you burn some of that fuel off, it really does come to you, this race car. And great to be able to peer into the cockpits as the cars come out of turn 4 to see Kapadia hard at work in that bright yellow helmet.
Yeah, but Kapadia has been racing at MP3 for a long time. He's wise, but yeah, you're quite right. See the front end of that car washing out with no grip whatsoever as we try to put the power down out of turn 14. He would have thought about it. He's nursed that car, he's nursed its tyres, and hopefully it's nothing else. Still within a second. Few laps though. Actually, the last lap he's lost a little bit of ground, but he gets to the top of the hill through turn 10, 11, gains it all over again. Has much more grip, so it seems, on the exit of turn 11, whereas increasingly for Matthias Kaiser in that second place Graf Ligier, it's starting to wash out on him now, so maybe his tyres beginning to go away, but he's got to make them last nearly 40 minutes in the remainder of this race, so push too hard too soon and you can really make it feel a very, very long run to the checkered flag at the end of 2 hours.
No, it's well, in the grand scheme of things, you feel like the bulk of this race is already gone, but 38 minutes is a long way to continue to push, and you have got to be constantly thinking about the three-dimensional, fourth-dimensional nature of this race. In that, okay, I'm finding speed now, but where is that going to lead me if I'm pushing hard now in the last 10 minutes or so? Porsche from TFT will be lapped by these two cars, second and third. The Porsche, by the way, now being driven by Julian Anlauer, and that car is in third position in the GT3 part of the field. Let's go to Graf though now and hear from Rory Penttinen with Haley.
I'm joined here by Rory Penttinen, driver of car number 26 for Graf. So right now, there's a big battle going on out there. Matthias Kaiser is trying to take first place, but he's also got car number 21 snapping at his heels. I mean, tell us what it's like, what it's like watching that as his co-team driver.
Yeah, it's for sure really interesting. And we knew before this race it will be a real thriller, because we are fighting for the third place in championship, and I think that's the most important thing now, to defend the third place for the championship. So we are keeping our eyes on the 69 car where they are, and I hope we will stay in the third place. That's our goal.
And you're doing a fantastic job, showing some great pace up there. Just tell us about the circuit. What's it like as a driver to be here in Portimão for this final round of the Michelin Le Mans Cup?
Yeah, it's a beautiful track. It's one of my new favorites for now. It's up and down. It's really amazing. So yeah, it was a decent stint for me. The first half hour was okay. Then I started to struggle with rear tire grip. So the last 20 minutes was not easy, but it was an okay stint. So we think fingers crossed for Matthias now.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rory.
Yeah, and just wondering whether Rory's ever raced at this circuit before. Quite possibly not, and it's instantly become his favourite therefore. Welcome to the club. I think a number of people have gone through that thought process through the years.
But until now he's been racing in GT3 cars, so to step up to P3s and come to a circuit like this, you can imagine the thrill and just the aerodynamic grip these cars provide. Monstrous in comparison to what went before. But to me, the interesting thing in that interview was how he said the last 20 minutes he was just simply hanging on because the rear tyre grip on that Ligier just going away. But right now, heading for second place. But one slip up and Alex Caparda is so close behind. He's within a second, often within half a second. He will be ready to pounce. But for Graf, their best results so far this year, Matthias Kaiser and Rory Penttinen, they've twice finished third, twice finished fifth. In fact, they've thrice finished third, the opening race of the season. But they're heading for second. So yeah, end on a high. And certainly you have to say that the race win with a 27-second deficit to Edward Kouhaup is it's beyond them. But if they could take that second place, they will be, they'll end their championship with a fillip. They'll be third overall in the points race, and that will be a really good return for them and for Graf.
Another car to be the recipient of a drive-through penalty, I'm afraid to say, is Ollie Hancock's number 50 Kessel Racing Ferrari. We've got the purple line that appeared at the bottom of the screen initially to say that they've been reported to the stewards for constant track limit abuse, and that's automatically turned into a drive-through now for the car fourth in the GT3 order. Just starting to lose a little bit of the light, I noticed now as well. The headlights on the cars are more prominent, despite them being on for most of the race. And one thing I noted last night when we arrived at the track is that so quickly the sun drops to the horizon and then it just becomes darkness within a sort of 15-minute period. Always has been the case here, particularly this time of year as well. We will be still clearly in daylight when we get to the end of the race, but that's another reason for ending a touch early. Used to sort of 6 or 6:30 ends to the Michelin Le Mans Cup. We will have this one done by 10 to 5 local.
It is as though someone's come into the room and without realising they're leaning back against the wall, their back is on the dimmer switch and they're just turning it down bit by bit. But still, here we are, the last day of October, just brilliant weather conditions here, and it's providing the perfect circuit for these drivers to end their season. A lot of them, this will be their last race of definitely this championship, maybe of their season, and to get to the end, to get to the start of this championship, I think has been an achievement. Yeah. But the quality of the racing here, up and down the field, has been cracking. No one could do anything about Nicola Molini. He's in the garage, but his car is back in the hands of Edward Kouhaup, and it looks though they'll be heading for another win. It won't be enough to take them the title, but job very well done. Bunching in the field as we look at Dino Lunardi continuing to attack Colin Noble. That's been rumbling for quite some while, but no change being offered by the Scot. You wouldn't expect it. That's the battle for sixth place. Another battle that's suddenly starting to shake up. Nicola Varone and Dominic Schwager, Geoffrey Denarder, Alessandro Giretti, all suddenly closing up. They're fighting over all the positions outside the top 10, but suddenly we had 4 cars covered by about 3 seconds, and that's with Varone and Giretti really picking off those in front of them. So that's a good little battle to look for as well.
As continuing to rage on is the fight for second and third. Another drive-through penalty, this time for speeding in the pit lane for the CD Sport car that is in the hands of Geoffrey Denarden now. Jacques Wolf started the number 6 machine. Yes, little battles going on around Laurence Hoare, but he's desperately trying not to get involved in any of those and stay in 8th position, which is still just about good enough to keep their heads above water. He and teammate Wolfgang Triller. Now, Triller's a long, long way back as far as the points are concerned, remember, but he is earning points for DKR Engineering to make sure that they get a 4th title in a row and will be the only outfit to take victory in LMP3 in the history of the Michelin Le Mans Cup, if it stays like it is right now.
Sad to see one of the Nielsen racing cars in the pits. That's Garis Grist at a standstill. So in fact, we started the race with 21 cars. Unless that one goes back into the race, we'll have fallen down to 19. We lost the other CD Sport Charger early in the race with an off-track moment up at turn 11 for Michael Jensen. They got that back to the pits, didn't manage somehow to get it back in the race. We said, Johnny, it was going to be out as an extended test session for them come what may, but alas, they didn't get the mileage, the chance to go back out onto the black stuff. Edward Cowhap, he's stabilised his pace in the lead of the race. He's 26.27 seconds. Look at the projection of the points. 3 points will be the margin of victory at the end of the race if they stay as they are. Cool Racing do all they can, but they will end up 3 points short if DKR Engineering can stay where they are. That is 8th place. Johnny is now starting to do some calculations on his notepad. It's a movable feast. The only person who can really dictate it, though, is Laurence Hoare. Stay where I am. Cowhap can only do what he's doing, which is continue to win the race. No need to take any risks. He's got a buffer of nearly half a minute. In fact, he seems to be backing off the pace a little bit. Doesn't need to take the risks. Nobody is going to challenge from behind. The number 37, Ligier from Cool Racing. Fabulous job. Way out clear. Coming up to turn 15 to complete yet another lap. He's got 50 on the board. Lap 51. About to be completed with half an hour remaining here at the Algarve International Circuit. And it really is just a case for him for going to the end of the race. There's nothing he can do about where DKR Engineering finish. And the driver on board there, Laurence Hoare, has suddenly got a new challenger. He could be going down to 9th place because Andy Merrick is closing in for United Autosports and Wayne Boyd is closing in on him. Merrick has to find 12 seconds, but he is closing in recent laps, so this is not over.
Well, remember that Laurence Hoare could fall as far down as 10th and DKR would still take the championship because they would earn a point for 10th position. That would take them to 106, exactly the same points that Cool Racing are set to score with their race victory. But when you do it on countback and you work out who's had more wins, well, you actually can't split them on wins, you can't split them on second or thirds either, but back down to 4th place, DKR would take it. Now, as it stands, the GT points look like this. 132 points. We know Iron Lynx have won the title. However, Kessel Racing on course for second. They would move to 92. Kessel are currently running in second in the championship. TFT with that spin earlier on, sadly for Nicky Leutwiler. It might have been a different story minus that, but they'll finish 3rd for PZ Obera Zurichsee by TFT. And then the Kessel Racing 67, not racing today, would finish 4th ahead of the other car we do have in the race, the number 50. So that's very useful to know, and I think the chance of GT3 race order changing relatively slim now, although David Perel at times, well, particularly on the last lap, he was way quicker than Giacomo Piccini. Piccini must have had some traffic to deal with, but 8.5 seconds now the margin. It started at 14, I think, when they came out from the pit, so it is condensing.
Another message on screen, it could have a role to play in the championship. Team manager of car 69, it's Cool Racing, but it's not our race leading car of the championship challengers, Edward Cowhap, but it's Matt Bell's car in 4th place overall. Go team manager to race director immediately. If that gets a penalty, that will take the pressure immediately off DKR Engineering. It will position them from 8th up to 7th. More points as you rise up the charts. Don't know what it is. The offence for Cool Racing's second Ligier. Edward Cowhap in the lead of the race. He can do nothing about anything. He's just going to keep going. He's staying resolutely 26 seconds to the good.
A lock-up a moment or two ago for Christophe Cresp at the top of turn 11. I think that's the first time we've seen Christophe have a slight moment there just before the plunge downhill towards 12. Still, just a handful of tenths of seconds between second and third place cars. Matthias Kaiser in the Ligier for Graf and Alex Capadia's Mulner Motorsport, Duquesne. And Capadia will be getting mightily frustrated now in the wheel tracks of Matthias Kaiser. But just got to keep patient and hope that there's a mistake on its way from Kaiser. But it's been a long wait for that so far. And now just under half an hour of the race to go. They take very, very different lines between 10 and 11. Capadia deciding to much more straight line that approach to 11, which means he's tighter on the way in and potentially runs a little bit wide on the exit. Car 50 reported to the stewards again for track limits. Well, there's already been a drive-through penalty for Ollie Hancock. 28 seconds was its last stop, and the team manager for 69 being sent to race control, as Bruce has already described. We don't know what that's all about just yet, but Matt Bell will push on. I'm sure the team have not told him that something is afoot regarding his car and his team.
It is metronomic how Edward Cowhaup is pegging his laps to those behind him. 26 seconds is 26.4, 26.6, 26.4. It's just staying even. And don't forget, Matt Kaiser in second place is working so hard to hold on to that position, pushed all the time by Alex Capadia. But, good work from the crew for just keeping the message clear to Edward Cowhaup. He's got 26 minutes remaining, but picture the scene for Matthias Kaiser. He still just seems to have a little bit of performance advantage, but remember his teammate Rory Penttinen got out of that Graf Racing Ligier and said, the last 20 minutes I was hanging on. We haven't got to the last 20 minutes yet, but so has Kaiser been a little kinder on his tyre in the heat of the battle? In many ways he's had a tiny bit more of a margin of safety between him and Alex Capadia. His teammate did before when he was being attacked so hard by Moritz Krantz. Moritz, of course, got the nose in front and then it went back the other way. But it just seems to have gone out from half a second to a second, the gap between second and third.
Very shortly, Matt Bell will be joining the party. He's just done an absolute best first sector, and that gap's definitely coming down. I don't think if Capadia was in clear air, not sure whether Matt would be able to catch him, but clearly Alex at times is a little bit quicker than Matthias Kaiser, wants to get by because he's feeling the pressure from behind. Matt Bell is certainly lighting up the timing screen now, and the 1:37.9 last time around for the man from Newcastle.
But one of the things that's really, really tricky at the circuit here in Portimão is the hump in the start-finish straight. You don't get the long line of sight behind you. A car could be 4 or 5 seconds behind, but it hasn't crested the flat part before the track then drops down towards the first corner. So it can conceal that moment where a driver can just have a little check around. It can conceal someone who's coming towards them. And on that last lap, well, yeah, Matt Bell took the best part of a second out of the pair of them. He's put in a very, very quick lap, just a whisker slower than the best lap of the race so far. Still in the hands of the teenager, the Italian, very impressive Italian, Alessandro Giretti.
Another car reported to the stewards for abusing track limits is the 98 Motorsport 98 entry of Dino Lunardi. Now that car's only 4 seconds up the road from Laurence Rohr. If that's instructed to come into pit lane to serve a drive-through, that'll give DKR another place back. They don't necessarily need it, but at least they're scoring more points, and that is now confirmed by race control that the 98 car will have to serve a drive-through, and the immediate car to benefit from that will be Laurence Rohr. It'll go from 8th up to 7th.
Yeah, and there's still the concern over car number 69. Team manager still probably heading towards race control. That's running in 4th place, so by just simply staying where he is on the circuit, Laurence Rohr, as you say, 3.5 seconds, 4 seconds down on Dino Lunardi. Lunardi should be peeling off to serve a drive-through penalty. And just take things as they come. Keep it clean, keep it tidy. That's the message from DKR Engineering.
And a black and white flag for track limits for David Perel, second in the Kessel Racing Ferrari, second in GT3, that is. Car 74 just getting a warning at this stage, but they're looking to score valuable points to make sure they finish second in the GT3 part of the championship.
Just nervous moments there for Colin Noble. He's picked his way past Christoph Cresp, who doesn't pull across in time. Dino Lunardi goes up a position as well, so Noble goes up into 5th. That could be elevated with those among them having in front and behind potentially having to serve drive-through penalties. So far it's the car behind going on for another lap. Dino Lunardi now up into 6th place, but he's got to call at the pits, and Matt Bell going faster and faster. He's just 3.7 seconds now down on that battle for 2nd place. It's Kaiser, Kapadia, and closing on the duo of K's, it's Matt Bell.
Now, I wonder whether we have a reason for the 69 crew to be called to the race control office, because an overtake that involved that car and the 27 is being investigated. A moment or two ago, this is not related. The 21 car all over the curb at turn 14, so Alex Kapadia unsettling the car briefly there. That will have lost him some time. Yes, earlier on, obviously there was a questionable overtake between Matt Bell's 69 Cool Racing car and the 27 of Christophe Cresp. Cresp was ahead of him, of course, earlier on because of Fabien Leverne's hard work earlier on in the race. So I wonder whether it was a problem as to how Matt got through. Haven't got the images to associate with that series. There's a car facing the wrong way on the downhill stretch at 11, which is the 27 car, with bits left and right of it. So Christophe Cresp has had a moment with the 24 machine. Goodness me, that's the Andy Merrick car. Now, where was Merrick in comparison with Cresp? They were right together. And presumably there's been some issue, maybe with a spinning Cresp and Merrick had nowhere to go. Or did they make contact with each other in the braking area for turn 10 and 11? Very tricky to tell from this distance. It's actually in the kink, isn't it, at 9? So it's before they've got to 10 and 11.
Yeah, you go into a dip, and at turn 9 you're then starting to rise, kicks up very, very fast. So I don't know if one's guess might be the one in front had a little moment and it snapped back across the track. Yeah, it's had a spin out of the kink. Now, how did Andy Merrick find it? He's coming presumably on the outside line. Or was it because the other car pulled back onto the track? Let's take a look. I fear that is going to be the case. Andy Merrick, left with 2/3 of nowhere to go. Oh, really unfortunate there for United Autosports and Andy Merrick. He was on a really good charge with Wayne Boyd close around him as well. They were working their way up through the tail end of the top 10 and definitely on the rise. Time to go gain more places. Safety car coming out onto the circuit. The car is sideways across the track, Christophe Cresp, but there's lots of debris up there as well, Johnny.
That's a real shame for Andy Merrick. I hope he's okay, because that was a nasty crash, absolutely harpooning Christophe Cresp. And well, it depends what the marshals were signalling to Andy Merrick. You can't, as the rejoining car, just expect people to get out of your way. But at the same time, if there are yellow flags out, then generally the message from race control is you need to be slowing down and being prepared to stop. So automatically, in the old days, you would say that was Cresp's fault, but in the modern era, maybe not. Tricky to tell. Thankfully, we're not making the decision. But it is a second safety car period for this race, and it falls right as the window for the second pit stop is opening.
And we've got Alex Kapadia who's responded to that. Kaiser's come in, Kapadia's come in from 2nd and 3rd, and Matt Bell as well from 4th. They've been very intelligent. Andy Merrick limping a little bit. That was a big contact, and really you had to feel for Andy Merrick there. It's a tricky part of the circuit. In fact, quite a few parts of this Algarve International Circuit provide little scope to see what's ahead of you, but it was just the fact that the car, Christophe Cresp MV2S, had gone off on one side of the circuit and then just put himself back into the middle of the track, and having guessed he wanted to go to the inside. Both United Autosports cars came through very close together, but Wayne Boyd in the second one of those got through. But unfortunately, he only got through, in fact, because Andy Merrick hit the other car and moved it out of the way. The United Autosports could have lost both of their cars in one fell swoop.
Yes, no, that could easily have claimed the 23 car with Merrick in the 24. But yes, that's the downside of both cars running at such close quarters, and they have been doing that for quite some time. Wayne Boyd all the way up to 2nd place now, and he's going to be, well, with a safety car right on the tail of Edward Cohope. So Cohope, yes, just in inverted commas, needs to win the race. This is going to help Laurence Hoare, though, of course. Have we yet seen the stop for the car that was ahead of it and judged to be at fault? I'm trying to remember who that was, actually. They were given a drive-through, weren't they? And that was going to put that car behind the Laurence Hoare machine. But we've had stops already, by the way. This is now the second stop that each of the LMP3s have to make because of the worry about fuel consumption with the new Nissan engine. And I mean, theoretically, everybody could do their extra stop here, which is an 85-second stop minimum under the safety car, and we could be left with everybody racing for position just as soon as the safety car is withdrawn.
Yeah, and you have to think that Edward Cowhope and Wayne Boyd need to get in the pits pronto. I don't think it's going to be the shortest safety car period, but in case it is, they need to serve that second pit stop and get back out into the train of cars. Other cars just diving into the pit lane, including Wayne Boyd and just in front Edward Cowhope. So they have responded, and presumably they should be able to. Well, we'll see where they rejoin, but the last few pit visitors coming in. And again, a hiatus in this race, and nearly 30 seconds was Cowhope's advantage after the incident involving Christoph Cresp and Andy Merrick, left with what was pretty much a face full of nowhere to go, going through the uphill kink at turn 9 and finding a car sitting in the middle of the track. Went to the inside line, the natural way to go, and unfortunately it was then filled for him. So for United Autosports on the charge with both Wayne Boyd and Andy Merrick, two Brits pressing on, and unfortunately for Andy Merrick, his was the one that was met with a face full of a rival's car sitting stationary in the middle of the track.
I mean, that was the other complication, is that Christoph Cresp was trying to get the required steering lock. Along with rejoining, he was trying to get the car muscled over the curve as well, and as he said, it was virtually stopped. He picked up some reasonable speed to get himself off the grass, but then whether trying to locate first gear or the required steering, as I mentioned, was then heavily collected. The car now trying to overtake the rescue truck, which is an interesting technique, whilst it's still got the strop attached.
What's surprising is the fact that there doesn't seem to be as much damage on the car that was stationary as the one that hit it.
No.
I know a lot of the bodywork, it was bodywork damage, but it was a big old clonk, and Andy Merrick certainly felt the impact in front of him, as well as the fact it's just simply quite shocking when suddenly you're pressing on and suddenly something you just don't expect happens in front of you. But S-World race leader Edward Cowhope has made his pit stop back out onto the circuit.
Yeah, so Matthias Kaiser scored as the race leader now, but that car hasn't made it has made its second stop. Matt Bell likewise, and the 21 of Alex Capadia as well. So it depends where they will all feed back into the mixture, but I'm not sure this has necessarily gone well for Edward Cowhope. Are we in a scenario now where Laurence Hoare circulates ahead of Cowhope, which is a dream situation for DKR Engineering? They were doing fine anyway in 8th place. Second pit stop now for Rinaldi Racing and Nicolas Varone, the Argentinian, in the 4th best Duqueine. Got that clutch of Duqueine cars running 3rd, 4th and 5th places. But yeah, I'm not entirely sure how we've ended up with the Cowhope car behind. I suppose because they're all behind the safety car, and it really depended on where they all were on the racetrack. They've each done 1 minute and 25, 1 minute 26. One car's done a 1 minute 30, but that's your 85 seconds ticked off. And yes, we have a new race leader. Speaking about Rory Penton, speaking to Rory earlier on, saying all they were going for really was 3rd in the championship. Well, 25 points will certainly help them in that regard. But Matthias Kaiser is going to have Matt Bell absolutely snapping at his heels when we go racing again. Just 14 minutes remain on the clock.
Well, just a real twist in the tail here. Everything. It was a near 30-second advantage for the car that surely was heading for victory. Cool Racing's entry, driven now by Edward Cowhope, brilliantly driven by him, brilliantly driven in the first half of the race by Nicola Morlini. But what I'd love to see, if I could wind back time, was where they were when the safety car came on the circuit and why they didn't come in. Likewise, Wayne Boyd would have tumbled down the order big time. He's fallen listed to 7th place behind 6th place Edward Cowhope, but they not so much. Boyd went up to 2nd by dint of not coming into the pits, but Edward Cowhope had that really huge lead. He's going to have to light it up when it gets to the restart. He will be, at the moment, he's listed as 8 seconds down. That's the compression on the race leader. But for Matt Kaiser, Well, it's come really, really good for Graf. They've had those 3 third places, but to end the season with victory would be mighty. But he's got Matt Bell in behind him, but we've seen that Matt was catching Kaiser and Kapadia, and in fact in that pit stop sequence has managed to get past. And again, looking at those times, Kapadia's pit stop for Malta Motorsport 1 minute 30, and the 2 cars in front 1 minute 25, 1 minute 26. That is how the places change. So full marks to Cool Racing, but the car they really want to win is not the one driven by Matt Bell. No disrespect to Matt and Maurice Smith, but it's Edward Cowhap and Nicola Morlini. That is their only hope of a championship. But look at the clock. Safety car still running around. 12.5 minutes remain. Are we going to get this race underway before the finish? I think we will, but there won't be much time for anyone to readjust their position.
No, and certainly not for Edward Cohen to make up 5 places. I think you bang on with its position relative to the finish line when the safety car came out. Presumably it either couldn't pit or they chose not to pit on the first opportunity. You then get wedged behind the safety car, which is circulating at 80 k's at best, maybe as slow as 60 kilometers per hour. And those behind, which do have the advantage of then going as fast as they like really to catch up with the safety car train, they can do the stop and then they can gain all that time back again. Whereas poor old Edouard, well, they've been in a situation where it was the safety car dictating the speed. That's where all the time has been lost. 30 seconds, as you said, as a race lead, and then 5 places. So a massive topsy-turvy change to the race order, and Wayne Boyd's been caught up in it as well. Dino Lunardi has emerged in roughly the same sort of place that he was actually, in 8th place. That car has been in, hasn't it? Yeah. 1 minute 26.
And he's just been waved past. He's about 95% of the lap down, because coming out of the final corner onto the start-finish straight is the Mercedes pace car. But in fact, number 98 disappeared from my view, from my little screen. He was a little dot on the screen, and now he isn't. So anyhow, doesn't matter. He's not at the sharp end of the field. So it's Matt Kaiser leading around from Matt Bell and Alex Kapadia, but the safety car is in front of them. And also some of the GT3 runners are in front of them as well. So that could be something in the mix as they try and race to the finish of this event, the last 2-hour race of the season. The clock keeps counting down and laps really do disappear under the safety car.
Well, the reason why the GTs are the first 4 cars on the road behind the safety car is, of course, they didn't have to make a second stop, so they just stayed out and everybody around them came in for their extra 85-second delivery of fuel. And in that stop you can only do fuel and then sort of meddle with the tyre pressures if you so wish, clean the windscreen, but anything else is strictly outside of the rules. And we are left therefore with Giacomo Piccini, not the race leader, but he is the first car behind the pace car. He's actually 13th in the overall positions, ahead of David Perel in the 74 Kessel Racing Ferrari. 3rd position and 3rd on the road is, well, 3rd position in GT3 and 3rd on the road behind the safety car, Julian Andlauer. And then it's the Ollie Hancock-driven Ferrari number 50. But the race leader has to be behind Hancock. I'll check that again in a moment, but that did look like a Graf livery car with Matthias Kaiser driving it. So 1, 2, 3, 4 GTs and then the 26 car.
So it's all about to happen. We will go racing again. Safety car in at the end of this lap, and I'm starting to feel for Matt Kaiser. He'd been attacked by Alex Kapadia for the second half of this race, the safety car hiatus, but Matt Bell has got into 2nd place. He just banged in the fastest lap of the race just before the safety car. He and his teammate Maurice Smith have taken 1 win early this year at Paul Ricard. I think they're really in the market for another, and of course for their sister car, the other car from Cool Racing. That was the one that they really had to win the race. That's restarting, taking this restart with 9 minutes on the clock from 6th in the queue. What might have been may yet still be, but it's going to be really, really hard for them. And particularly the car they need to pick off is the one immediately in front, DKR Engineering, the championship leaders. Within 9 minutes, 10 minutes, they could be champions.
So, a fascinating restart between the 2 GT3 leaders. It might not be that they are leading the race outright, but this is David Perel's opportunity to get ahead of Giacomo Piccini, and likewise Matt Bell absolutely side by side as Perel is nearly in the pit lane. So the 2 Ferraris absolutely side by side. He went for it, didn't he? But now in the fight back, Giacomo Piccini. Meanwhile, Matt Bell did get ahead of Matthias Kaiser for the lead of the race overall as they worked their way through. I knew this was going to be busy. What a cracking into the season this is for 8 or 9 minutes. Out of 4 they go. The Porsche just trying to stay out of trouble as best it can. The Ferraris in the end then did not change position, and it's a battle side by side between the two leaders in P3 and GT3.
Yeah, and Edward Cowhope has got past Lawrence Hoare. Doesn't matter to Hoare, he can let him through, but it was really squirrely and snaky. I wasn't sure I liked that moment between the two Ferraris on the run. One effectively diving into pit exit. Anyhow, it's Mastroianni in front. Oh no! Matt Bell, by the looks of things, has gone off. Is that him backwards? Wait for the dust to settle.
Yes, it is. He's got the green rear wing on the 30, on which number is that? 69, isn't it? We'll confirm that in just a second when they go through the next split. But I can see the Graf car there. Yes, Matthias Kaiser now confirmed as the race leader. Colin Noble's up to second for Nielsen Racing. Alex Capadia for Mulner Motorsport running third. And Laurent Hoare, amazingly enough, the DKR engineering crew, who are set to take the title if things stand like this, he's running fourth ahead of Wayne Boyd and Edward Cowhope, who'd led the race for such a long time and had that mammoth 30-second advantage.
Well, I tell you something, I think for nothing, I don't think Matt Bell went off all on his own. Turn 7, not the sort of place you're likely to get it wrong. A driver of Matt's experience, but extraordinary. He did it all on his own. Sorry, I stand corrected, and I just thought they were all so close, but oh, how frustrating. Everyone else behind. At least nobody else was caught out in that moment. Imagine that on this restart. Yellow flag out at turn 7.
Giacomo Piccini now reported to the stewards for dangerous driving. Well, that can only be what happened at the restart when David Perel ended up in the pit lane exit road. They were side by side and he did get squeezed to driver's right. I mean, you made the comment and I agreed with it at the restart. They nearly made contact. Great driving from the both of them to avoid that, but that's not something we like to see. And David Perel, therefore, could be with an opportunity to take victory here. It depends how the stewards react to that. Will it be a drive-through, or possibly even worse?
Yeah, well, let's see. Leading by 1.8 seconds, Matt Kaiser. Colin Noble, though, for Nielsen Racing, really looking to end the season on the high. Their best result, third place at Spa in round 2. Second is great, but they really fancy a first win. Absolutely nothing Tony Wells can do about it, but Colin Noble on a massive charge. But look, just under 6 minutes remaining in the race. And what a race. Everywhere you look, someone is having a fight with someone.
Yeah, that was Nicolas Varone, wasn't it? Around the outside at turn 9 to try and net himself certainly 7th and possibly 6th on Wayne Boyd. Meanwhile, Alex Capadia reaches the top of the hill at 13. With 5.5 minutes still to go. Kaiser leads it by 1.4 seconds from Colin Noble and the Nielsen, number 7. This might be a best result of the year for Nielsen. Alex Capadia, yeah, in 3rd position, and Laurence Hoare in 4th ahead of Dino Lunardi and Wayne Boyd. Now, who was for 55 trying to get through as he had a little look at Matt Bell?
Did the restart in 6th. I thought I saw him gain a position on the run over towards turn 5, over that crest, past the big rotunda, the viewing tower, but he seemed to have lost a couple of positions by the end of the lap. Might have been mistaken identity. He just doesn't have the pace at this point in the race. His last lap was a 1 minute 49. The good lap is a 1 minute 39. Something very much untoward for the car that could have taken the title. It was always an outside chance, but with DKR Engineering number 3 just still going. But this extraordinary situation, Johnny, with the GT3 runners in among the P3 cars at the end of the race here.
David Perel got such a great run on the number 8 car that leads the GT3 division of this race, but he couldn't find an inside line at 5 because the whole place was flooded with LMP3s that were getting through, obviously because of their greater downforce ability and their slightly higher speed as well between 4 and 5. And now Perel's opportunity of getting by 8 on the road, I think, might have gone. Although Giacomo Piccini is going to have to deal with these quicker LMP3s behind. It's Dominic Schwager in the 66. And also there is the 3 car of Laurence Hoare. So they're not even on the same lap, but it doesn't stop them potentially tangling with each other.
Well, for David Perel, the win in GT3 could come his way because the team manager of car number 8 to race director immediately. We know why. It was the restart, and certainly with David Perel's Kessel Racing Ferrari ending up across the red and white hatching at pit exit. It seems there is quite a case to answer. Up at the front of the field, 1 second to the good. Matt Kaiser surely now heading for victory, but closing in, but only by 1/10 of a second. Colin Noble heading for 2nd place will be the best result for Nielsen Racing this year, but he wants more, and why not?
This is not a nice place for Laurent Roux to be involved with. Dino Lunardi, he is allowed to get by, and I perfectly understand that. He's right ahead, remember, of the GT3 leader, so Giacomo Puccini not wanting to give up this relentless pace. The only thing Laurent Roux wants to do is just stay well out of the way of any potential carnage, but he's in the melee, and there were 3 LMP3s completely bolted together as they headed across the line. So he's happy to relinquish some of these places, but you know, how far does he tumble? With Wayne Boyd and Nicolas Varone very close indeed for United and for Rinaldi respectively. More yellow flags, this time being displayed through the kink at 6 and the first bit of 7. Now is that still to do with Matt Bell, or is there something else that's happened on that part of the track? Matt Bell, of course, stranded in the gravel after he ended up there all on his own at the restart.
I think it's still the one incident. I think it's just to warn the drivers before that left-hand kink, because you go over a bit of a brow, and then, of course, you arrive very soon after that at turn 7 with the car still beached in the gravel. I think that's very sensible marshalling. But this, just over 2 minutes remaining in this race, 3/4 of a second between Matt Kaiser leading the race and Colin Noble in second. But Colin is going to have to strike very, very soon. And for Laurent Roux, he's safe at the moment in 5th place. The title will be his, but it's busy. He's got Wayne Boyd all over his tail. He's just under a second down on Dino Lunardi. He could lose a place or 2. It honestly doesn't matter for DKR Engineering, but it's just not getting caught in someone else's moment, really.
Still very tight for the top 2. Colin Noble senses, can smell a race victory here, but he needs to start to turn the screw on Matthias Kaiser. There's a minute and 40 seconds left on the clock, and lap time round here in an LMP3 car is a minute and 38, minute and 37 at best. So let's see how much time will be left on the clock. Well, we're inside a lap time now, aren't we? So for the race leaders, once they go across the line, they will be effectively seeing the last lap board. Kaiser versus Noble, 0.8 of a second now separate them. It's a lot less than that though in GT3, with the white and black of Giacomo Puccini just ahead of the red and white of David Perel.
Yeah, I just had confirmation, by the way. We raised the question, why did Edward Cowhoup not come in? He just passed pit entry with the safety car, and really that's so cruel. It took any tilt at the title from them, and Nicola Molini and Edward had this race in the palm of their hand. They were 30 seconds the good. I bet they were wishing they were only 28 seconds the good, because that could have been all the difference, and they would have then been able to dive into the pit lane. And right now Edward Cowhoup is down in 8th place overall, shoulders down, disconsolate. He's 3 seconds down on Nicola Varone. He's way ahead of Alessandro Giretti, but really it was removed from their hands. They didn't make a mistake, it just didn't happen their way. It's cruel.
Yeah, they couldn't have pitted before the 100-minute mark in the race, and as they crossed the line or past the pit lane entry, there weren't enough minutes gone, and it was probably down to actually seconds, but they had no choice to come in because they would have been outside of that final pit stop window, whereas the cars further back did have that time in hand and the luxury of choosing when they came in, and those that pitted earlier were in a far better place. They didn't have to circulate behind the safety car. Nothing between these two. There's still a bit of a question mark as to the behaviour of Giacomo Puccini at the restart, but his number one task is keeping the red and white car behind him, number 74 from Kessel.
One thing that will help Puccini is the fact there's a yellow flag at turn 8. Can't tell you what that's for. They've cleared the one for turn 7 for Matt Bell's car. That's obviously been removed, but going one way, going the other. Perel's trying to take the outside line. There is no outside line at turn 5. Of course, he'll get the better exit speed, but then can't quite get it. Oh, I had half a car length gain, but it's not enough. Through turn 6 they go.
And this is the point where the yellow flag will kick in. So even though Perel might get a good run through turn 8, he's going to have to stay in the wheel tracks of car number 8, Giacomo Puccini, as the race leaders are about to finish the final lap of the season. But we will keep you tuned to the order of those two Ferraris. Doesn't matter for the championship, but the 74 desperate for a race victory, and for Kessel Racing, for the final time this year then, out of turn 15, comes the race leader, soon-to-be race winner, Matthias Kaiser for Graf, and along with Rory Penton and in the earlier stint, they become victors in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Congratulations to them after a bizarre old finish to the race, and only by 0.8 of a second do Colin Noble and Tony Wells miss out. Alex Kapadia home in third place along with Moritz Krantz, and they drove an exemplary race as well in their Duquesne. Dino Lunardi in the 98 car will finish in fourth place along with his co-driver Eric Dodonka. And in the GT3s it was Giacomo Piccini who hung on by just under a quarter of a second from David Perel. That was really very tight indeed for the last few laps. And well, pay close attention to the results website later on this evening, because there might be a post-race decision to be made there regarding Giacomo Piccini's technique in holding David Perel back at the restart.
Well, you can obviously say drivers don't come to a circuit and think fifth place would be really rather good, but it certainly is very, very good for DKR Engineering. Lawrence Hall, he must have felt cars were coming at him from all angles after that restart. In fact, cars were coming from all angles at everybody after that restart, but he just wanted his car to be bulletproof. And for DKR Engineering, champions in 2017, there's a bit of a theme coming here, 2018, 2019 and now 2020, so well done, and well done too for Wolfgang Triller for doing the hard yards in the first half of the race. And for DKR Engineering, huge applause down in their garage. They have done it again, and watching from home, Jean Gloria up in Belgium must be going, well done crew.
Yeah, he knows what it's like. Jean Gloria was champion in 2017, but he would dearly have loved to have backed that up with another championship in 2020, but for family reasons, as explained to us by Laurence Roux a little bit earlier on in the race, he stays at home, and a real tough decision, but I think the right one for him not to be here today. And there is always next year, of course. Laurence Roux, in the meantime, backing up his title from last year with Francois Kerman with another in 2020. So a decision to be made by Laurence as to what he does in season 2021. Maybe go for the hat-trick of victories in the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Rino Mastronardi and Giacomo Piccini were already confirmed as champions. They did that at Monza at the team's home race and the driver's home race, but they managed to take victory on the road as well, although there was that message on the screen suggesting that a team manager from car 8 would need to go to race control. We haven't yet had anything through on our screen saying that that was bad driving. It was questionable, certainly, because there was a squeeze put on David Perel as they were going down to the first corner at very, very high speed. And from Perel's perspective, ending up effectively off the racetrack would not have been a great feeling. They did avoid contact, and Piccini did allow Perel to rejoin the racetrack, but because Perel then was so deep into turn one, Piccini got the place back again, and I'm sure that will be reviewed a few more times before we get the eventual confirmed final classification. Can't shut the door now, Matthias Kaiser, but that will matter. There is a team member on site that is able to do that for him. And congratulations to Graf, who, well, had to ride the storm for a lot of that. Think about all the attacking that it had from behind from the Mullner Motorsport car, whether it was Moritz Krantz or Alex Kapadia, and they come out winners. That's their reward.
It goes to prove that on so many small margins a race could be won or lost. It could have been so easy in that battle between both pairs of drivers from Graf and from Mullner Motorsport, just to slip a little late under braking into turn 11 as we saw, or down into turn 1. And what a tale of ups and downs for Cool Racing. They had it in the bag with the car, with their championship hopefuls. They ended up in 8th overall just because they couldn't get into the pit lane. It wasn't ready for them. They were past it before the safety car came out, and that cost them the lead. In fact, they came back out in 6th place. I think there was a moment as well for Edward Cowhout, but by then it was too late. And their sister car now being removed from the gravel, the outside. Matt Bell got into the lead. He was going to at least give surely a race win to Cool Racing to round out their season. It didn't happen. He was off on his own, just too quick into turn 7. And God, so many stories within that final Michelin Le Mans Cup race for 2020. As Rino Mastronardi walks down the pit lane towards the podium, Giacomo Piccini will be waiting for him, but it's quite possible the race directors will be, and stewards will be waiting to speak to them as well. They've already asked for the team manager from Iron Links to go up and pay them what may not be a social visit, but thoroughly entertaining season. So many ups and downs, but I think looking at the racing today, the ups outweigh the downs very, very much. I think it's been fabulous advertisement for this championship on a circuit that is absolutely brilliant.
No, very much agreed there, and delighted for Graf Racing to take their first victory of the season. So, wind the clock back to the start of the race at 2:50 this afternoon. Very busy indeed. This was a sign of things to come, and one car caught going around the outside of a couple of others to gain places was Team Virage. They would be pinged for that later on, and clouds of tyre smoke from certain cars. Actually, that was Maurice Smith in the early stages in the car that eventually Matt Bell would take over. Drone coverage really supplying this great ability to see the circuit from some different angles and to appreciate the gradient change. An early safety car because of the CD Sport number 5 machine finding the gravel at turn 11. That also provided an opportunity for Christophe Cresp to come in and switch to co-driver Fabien Laverne, who would then motor his way through the order. Finally an overtake for Moritz Krantz. He tried virtually all through his stint to get ahead of the eventual race winner number 26, and that would provide a great platform for Alex Capardia when he took over. And the battling continued mid-race between, well, sometimes GTs and LMP3s. It didn't seem to matter. Straight into the new stint for the drivers, Matthias Kaiser and Alex Capardia. And Kaiser wasted no time at all in repaying the favour on the Mullner Motorsport Duqueine car. 37, that was the long-term leader, eventually dropping back by virtue of the pit stop, the final pit stop that needed to be made, and purely its timing that didn't go well. This was a nasty incident, still I think being investigated, but not a great sight to see Andy Merrick limping away from his car after that big impact, and the United Autosports car far more damaged visually than the car that it collected. And Andy Merrick, well, great to see him actually walking away under his own steam, but he would have to spend a little bit of time lying down behind the Armco barrier, thankfully with a couple of marshals in attendance tending to him. Then the restart, and this is what we're all talking about now, as David Perel got the run on Giacomo Puccini. There's no doubt about that, but he wasn't necessarily given the space, and he ended up in the pit lane exit road. Thankfully was able to rejoin the track safely, but there was the glancing blow as well. Puccini would leave the scene in the lead of the race. Matt Bell, who was leading at the time, spinning off all on his own and into the gravel trap at turn 7, which would leave yellows out and that part of the circuit for the rest of the race. And this was, remember, only about a 9-minute restart, or 9 minutes left on the clock as we went racing again. Eventual winners then, Matthias Kaiser together with his teammate Rory Penton, and a first win, I think, of both of their careers. Certainly a first win this year for number 26 in the Graf car. So congratulations to them. Colin Noble and Tony Wells with the best result of their season too. And Mullner Motorsport for Moritz Krantz and Alex Capardia finishing in 3rd position. So a very provisional result for the final round, round 6 of the Michelin Le Mans Cup. Graf take victory after 67 laps by 0.8 of a second from the Nielsen car number 7 and Mullner 3rd. Motorsport 98 with Dino Lunardi and Eric de Donker finishing 4th ahead of DKR Engineering. United Autosports, that's the much straighter of the two cars that started the race. Rinaldi, Cool, Team Virage and Rinaldi Racing in their sister car complete the top 10. Then the CD Sport number 6 of Geoffrey Denarder and Jacques Wolf. Edex Sport had a spin mid-race, but did recover to 12th. And this is the provisional bit, I would wager. 8 finishing ahead of 74, certainly on the track. And we wait to see what the decision is from the stewards' room. But the 4 GT3 cars are the final finishers, actually. Everybody behind them, Cool Racing, MV2S, United, Nielsen and CD Sport either didn't make the finish or didn't do the required 75% of it. But of course, you still need to be a race finisher in this type of racing to be deemed as a car with a result. But Iron Lynx ahead of Kessel Racing and then TFT to complete the GT3 podium after a good drive from Julian Anlauer. Unfortunately, a spin earlier on in the race for Nicky Leutwiler meant that we weren't fully concentrating on the Frenchman's stint, but he was only 1.3 seconds away from David Perel. And I did wonder whether he might be able to get involved with those 2 Ferraris at the restart, but they had other plans, I think it's fair to say. The sun's going to set very, very quickly here, but for me, some cracking memories from this hastily arranged Michelin Le Mans Cup season. The first race we had was July after the chaos of 2020, and we all know the stories behind that, but really good that we could get 6 races in. And I think particularly when we went to Le Mans, this championship really did advertise itself perfectly. So we are actually in the process now of waiting for instruction from race control. It'd be nice to get it straight for the podium rather than deliver the trophies and then for everything to be rearranged kind of when people are on the flights home.
No, exactly so. And in fact, in these days of social distancing and needing things to be wiped down, you don't want to give the trophies to one team and then have them given to another one, do you?
It's a very good point. Yeah.
There we are. Health and safety comes to the fore in the world of Bruce. But, you know, I look back at that race and it was just, I thought it was absolutely stunning. I think there was racing everywhere we went looking, and some real good little cameo roles coming as well for names for the future. But just looking at the history of Rory Penttinen, he only came across to P3s this year. Matthias Kaiser had a toe in the water last year, but only started his racing career effectively last year. So it is the first win at this level for the two of them.
Yeah.
And, you know, with Matthias coming from Liechtenstein, the last driver I can remember coming from Liechtenstein was Ricky von Opel, who raced in Formula One, the scion of the Opel family back in the early to mid 1970s. So he's second in a very short line, and certainly really made impact, because both Kaiser and Penttinen had to suck up so much pressure, constant attacks from first Moritz Krantz and then from Alex Kapadia. So that makes it, you know, they'll be all the more delighted with that. They didn't crack.
So the Porsche, no question, finished in third. This is the PZ Aubera Zürichsee sponsored TFT prepared Porsche, and question of what might have been, I suppose, as far as Nicky Leutwiler is concerned. Don't quite know how he ended up in a half spin at turn 14, but it cost him 30 odd seconds, and that might have put him in a slightly better position when we reached the safety car. 74 at least on the road, finishing in second place for Kessel Racing after a good drive from Michał Broniszewski. Once again, rock solid he was as the bronze and the opening stint, and he handed over to David Perel, who's always lightning quick, and gave it absolutely everything to take the lead away from Giacomo Puccini. But it's the 8 car though that finished ahead, and we're waiting to see what the stewards have decided regarding that scrap. It's relatively easy, I suppose, to reverse the positions if they think that Giacomo Puccini was enough at fault for that to be warranted. But we are now going to potentially do the trophy presentation for LMP3s and delay GT3, but it may well be that we can't get to the podiums before the end of our programme, sadly. So dramatic the final round has been, but at least the championships are settled and that's all done and dusted, and this decision doesn't necessarily change the course of who we're going to be seeing at Le Mans next year. And DKR just continue to rattle on. They have taken another title in the Michelin Le Mans Cup and amazingly finished ahead of the car that they were fighting with. I don't think they saw that coming, and I certainly didn't either. My thanks to Bruce Jones over the last couple of hours. Hope you've enjoyed it as much as we have. From Bruce Jones and Johnny Palmer, we'll see you tomorrow. Bye for now.